Chapter 1 begins with a reflection on the number of doctors per 1,000 inhabitants, 2-4. As the protagonist crashes through the grass, the thought hits him hard. Japan is ranked 5th from the bottom among all OECD member countries. Yeah, the OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, with 38 nations pushing for better living standards, more jobs, and stronger global growth. He thinks even this could be a blessing because in Tanzania, East Africa, there are just 0.6 doctors for every 1,000 people, and then he imagines it. What if there's a place even worse off than Tanzania, a place where Tanzania would suddenly look like pure fortune by comparison? As he finally stops, the sheer wind from a massive dragon slams into him, and the question hits hard. In a world like this, what does it even mean to be a doctor? That night, the protagonist finally burst into a bar just a little late, but the moment he stepped in, things were about to get wild. Right there, two of his old colleagues are waiting, Okusawa and Yamagishi, buddy friends from his residency days. The three of them haven't shared drinks since those days. Okusawa digs at him for always being buried in work, telling him to finally take a real break, while Yamagishi snaps back that clocking out on time doesn't count as resting. Their talk suddenly shifts when Yamagishi blurts that his family is about to welcome a baby, and Okusawa can't hide his excitement. Grinning like crazy as I cheered him on with pure, unfiltered joy. The vibe flips into celebration, then Yamagishi drops a new bombshell because Amami has news too and he's finally ready to tell them. The mom blurts that he's being transferred. Okusawa is completely stunned. They're sending him to Suwajima Clinic on some remote island village with 0 doctors, and they've got him booked for the very next day, leaving his friends stunned as they demand, "Why would you bail on the hospital where you're finally building your career?" Amami just shrugs it off and says the island's got people who need help, so somebody has to go. Just as they're locked in mid-conversation, the hospital calls out of nowhere and cuts everything short. Amami leans in, listens close, then snaps back with calm urgency, because the patient she's been watching for cirrhosis is now vomiting blood and it looks like his esophageal varices just ruptured. He orders the staff to set up 4 units of MAP, a 140 milliliter red blood cell solution packed with additives, and to start right now to slam the bleeding under control. Then he grabs his bag to leave, tells his friends it's one of his patients and he'll be back once they're stable, and gives Yamagishi one last quick congratulations before he heads out. As Okusawa vanishes through the bar's doorway, Yamagishi can't help but wonder, loudly, whether Amami's transfer is all hospital power games, but Yamagishi just shakes his head. It was meant for him at first, yet the moment Amami heard about his trouble, he stepped up and offered to take his place. Okusawa lets out a heavy sigh and says this is just how Amami is, always bleeding himself dry for everyone else. Then he bites back a bitter laugh. Amami even shows up at a bar, walks out without touching a single drink. Yamagishi explains it straight. Amami doesn't drink anymore. He used to, but after a long-ago incident, he swore off alcohol for good. Okusawa sighs again, repeating the same truth like it still stings. Amami came to the bar and still left empty-handed. He refused to risk crushing remorse if one of his patients got hurt because of him. Okusawa snorted at that whole hero idea. But under that teasing grin, you can feel it. Quiet admiration for the guy who always ends up carrying everyone else's weight. The second Amami steps into the operating room, everyone's already moving, and another doctor greets him as soon as he arrives. Then he gets right to work, starting the procedure and calling out the moment hemostasis begins. He orders the staff to gear up for EVL, endoscopic variceal ligation, then drills the whole procedure in his head. EVL, a treatment for varicose veins used in emergencies like active bleeding or as a preventive move through an endoscope. Night melts into morning, and in a quiet consultation room, a mom breaks down the results of a genetic test to another mother and her child. The test screams that a mutation's hiding in the Phe-C gene, then the diagnosis drops, hypophosphatemic rickets, and the mother's fists tighten with pure, gut-wrenching worry. A mom sits with her thoughts and realizes the disease is all about one thing going wrong in the kidneys. The renal tubules start mishandling phosphorus reabsorption, so phosphorus floods out through urine instead of staying where it belongs. With serum phosphorus levels dropped low, the body can't build and mineralize properly and rickets breaks out, while in adults, the same nightmare shows up as osteomalacia. Depending on the case, it can be inherited or not, with the inherited forms split into different inheritance patterns and symptom styles. Amami calms the mother's panic, tells her the condition is under control, and says the oral meds are already working, so the mother finally lets out a shaky breath and looks like she can breathe again. While the chaos unfolds, two nurses trade whispers from the sidelines. One with bangs says Dr. Amami must have stayed the night again, and the ponytailed nurse nods, remembering how he refused to leave after stopping a patient's bleeding. The bangs nurse gasps that it's his last day, and the ponytailed nurse answers, "Yeah, he insisted on owning his patient's fate all the way to the end," recalling how his careful diagnosis saved a little girl's mystery from staying a mystery when her fractures kept repeating. Nana, the little girl, beams like the sun and thanks Amami with all her heart, but her mother quickly nudges her to say it properly, "Doctor," and when Amami hears it, he smiles back, warm and gentle as ever. The nurse with bangs lowers her voice and quietly says she wished Amami could have stayed at the university hospital. "Because he's such a good soul." The nurse with a ponytail nods along, then admits with a tired sort of resignation that even good people can't live at the university forever. Before he leaves, Amami leans in and tells Nana and her mother, "This is my last day." Then he presses them to keep taking the medicine exactly as prescribed, no missing a dose, while Nana's mother drops into a deep, heartfelt bow. Nana frantically waves and shouts her goodbye as she goes. A mom in the waiting room waves back, grinning like everything's fine. And as they head out, the nurse with bangs leans in, mutters that going to some village with no doctor is basically a one-way ticket, and that the job's got no real future for someone trying to climb the career ladder. Just as she's about to keep going, the ponytailed nurse snaps her over and asks for help. She winces, apologizes, then rushes to assist. Right then, Amami calls out to both nurses, thanking them from the bottom of her heart for everything they've done, and they start to brush it off, until he insists, "No, I should be the one thanking you." He grins, tells them he'll be back before long, right on time, and sends them off with wishes for happiness, because before the moment can even settle, Imam suddenly finds himself on a boat, tearing through rough ocean waves. The sea's a beast, the wind's roaring, he slams over the railing and vomits hard into the waves. Right there, the captain stares at him in shock, yelling like, "Are you serious?" Half scold, half amused, and the best part. Doctor catches seasickness instantly. What a hilarious mess. He asks if Amami didn't pop any motion sickness pills, and Amami, ashen and swaying, mumbles that he probably puked them up anyway, plus they barely did anything at all. The captain can't make out a word over the roar of the waves. He snaps back at the guy to speak up, laughing at the idea that doctors are so fragile, and then he chuckles anyway, say it plain, "Today's seas are brutally vicious, and that's the perfect welcome for a man sailing toward a place where there's no doctor at all, just him." Wild winds and rain batter the boat as Amami finally reaches the remote island. Then the storm nearly shoves him right back when he steps off, soaked and shaking as he mutters to himself that he made it. A man on the shore yells for him to hurry inside, and once Amami is in, he frantically wipes off the rain and scans the dim room, thick with damp and smelling of wood and salt. "Is this the storeroom?" he asks. The mayor tells him the place used to be for surgeries, but it's long been abandoned, fallen into disrepair, and stuffed with old junk, and he even apologizes for the mess, while saying the sleeping area in the back still needs repairs. But as he talks on, Amami can barely follow, because the man's local dialect is so heavy it's like trying to catch words through a storm. He leans in, jaw tight, trying to catch every sound, but they all smear together, until embarrassment hits and a mom with perfect manners tells the mayor, "I know this came out of nowhere, but I've heard our village has been without a doctor for ages." And she adds, "If anyone needs medical help, tell him right away." The mayor and the other islanders lock eyes and trade nervous glances. Then, after a beat, the mayor exhales with pure relief and thanks, even if his thick accent mangles the words so badly that even a mommy can barely make them out. His mommy apologizes again and says he's only just gotten here, so he can't quite catch what everyone's saying, while he sinks into silence and feels horrible because they went through the worst weather just to welcome him in. He vows to master their dialect fast so he can finally talk to them clearly and be the doctor they need. The mayor grins, grips Amami's hand with a solid shake, and throws his thanks out for the whole island to hear. The captain standing right there lets out a laugh and tells her mom, "Don't worry," while the mayor's accent is so heavy even locals have to strain to understand him. The mayor admits the country is full of villages with zero doctors, and insists Amami's arrival is a real miracle because they were gearing up to throw him a celebration, but the storm slammed the plans and forced it to be cancelled. Mommy gets moved in the quietest, gut-wrenching way. He remembers there are about 600 villages in Japan with no resident doctor, and even government pleas don't manage to fill those spots, so he vows to learn the local dialect and blend into the community, while the captain chuckles again, teasing him not to push himself too hard. While the rain hammers the island, the mayor orders Amami to get some rest. This storm comes first. If it calms down, they'll come back and talk again tomorrow. Mom thanks everyone and tells them straight up, if anyone gets sick, run to him immediately. Once they're gone, the room turns dead quiet until the rain starts drumming on the wooden walls. Exhausted, Imam collapses onto the cramped bed in the back room, body heavy and thoughts fogged to nothing. He grumbles that he's totally spent, then forces himself to grab the local dialect before anything else. His eyes snag on a bottle of water sitting on the table and he starts thinking, should I toss this in the fridge so it's cold when I need it later? The moment he swings open the refrigerator door, a blinding flash rips through the room, then a deafening crack hits, lightning hammers the building, and a violent surge of electricity tears through the metal frame. His mother's body jerks and convulses as the current rips through him, and then, light dies and the world drops into darkness. Under a blood-red sky, a carriage clatters down the dirt road, chains rattling as a line of slaves shuffles behind it, guards snapping them forward. The creature is yanking that carriage forward, dragging it like it's being hunted. Massive beasts with hooved feet snort like thunder and stomp through the mud. Tucked among the slaves is a young beast girl, drained to the bone and barely standing, wasting away from sheer hunger. She trips hard and slams down on her knees. A guard roars at the caravan to stop dead in its tracks, and the driver yanks the reins, thwack, and the carriage grinds to a halt. The guard catches sight of the fallen girl and snarls like a wild animal. He orders her to rise and walk, but her body refuses to move, so from inside the carriage, the merchant and her master barks for Crane, one of the guards. King whips around to face the merchant, holding his breath, ready for the command that's about to drop. The merchant snaps cold as ice, kill her. He spits back that he won't touch defective slaves and he never lets any of them walk free. Crane hesitates, blurting that the girl is too valuable to lose, but the merchant's razor-sharp glare shuts him up, so Crane finally caves and nods. He promises he'll clear this fast so the rest of the merch doesn't get soaked in blood, then he yanks the beast girl up rough and drags her away from the others. Her whole body shakes and tears pour down her cheeks. Gru tells her it's bad luck, blames her weakness, and lifts his spear. Right before he can swing, the world detonates with a thunderous roar and a massive shadow crashes in from behind him. Crane whips around just in time to spot a monstrous chimera bursting out of the dark forest, fangs bared, mouth snarling, and eyes blazing with pure fury. Panic erupts among the guards. Crane screams a warning and bolts, shouting for everyone to run while the chimera's roaring shakes the whole valley. Beast Girl, petrified with terror, can only gape as it looms over her, towering like a nightmare. Its eyes snap onto her shaking body, she shrieks, and the chimera rockets forward, clamping onto her as everything erupts into wild chaos. Deep in the forest, a mom sat right beside a tree trunk, holding her ground like the forest itself. When he woke up, he rubbed his head, totally baffled. He spun around, confused, not a clue where he even was. A tiny rustle snapped his focus. There was a slime slurping from a nearby puddle, and his shock hit instantly. He pinched himself hard to make sure this wasn't a dream, then the pain hit, real as anything, and his senses stayed sharp and fully on. So yeah, this wasn't some dream. Still totally locked in, he stared at the slime's moves, hungry to figure out what it even was, how it worked, and why it looked so weirdly like the monsters from video games, until his thoughts kept rolling and the slime. Slime shot his hand for a sports drink and Amami leaned in, eyeing it like it was a mystery. He instantly knew this wasn't Seiwajima, something about the whole place felt brutally wrong. Then, before he could even think, a beast girl dropped onto him out of nowhere. Knocking him down, he stumbled back, stunned, then his eyes caught her animal-like ears, but before he could finish the thought, he got more and more alarmed by her ragged, offbeat breathing. Something was definitely wrong. Moments later, the slime surged upward and swallowed Amami's head whole. He thrashed to break free, and then it finally peeled off. He caught the beast girl's trembling voice pleading with him, telling him to run. He stared, shocked. Somehow her words suddenly made perfect sense to him. Before she could even scream, he snatched her into his arms, right as a towering chimera burst from the trees and stared him down like it wanted a fight. The panicked mom bolted into action, sprinting off with the injured girl in her arms. He stumbled hard and hit the ground, and the second that chimera drew near, He yanked her into the bushes, heart pounding as a desperate plan snapped into place, medical pen-like gripped tight in his hand. He shot to his feet and screamed, waving that glowing light to yank the beast's attention away from him. Chimera snapped its head toward him. Stomping through the undergrowth like the forest itself was getting crushed. Right when it was about to lunge and strike, slime came crawling back right on cue. It blasted a wild torrent of water, bursting up like a roaring fountain. The chimera hesitated, glaring at the display with wary eyes, then slipped back into the forest as the water slowly drained away. After seeing the slime save them, the mommy finally got it. This thing really pulled them through. He stared at it in pure awe, thinking maybe it even helped him start catching the beast girl's words. He rushed to check the girl and nearly sighed in relief when he saw her still breathing. Then he spotted the rash and snapped to the conclusion it was a full-blown allergic reaction. Chapter 2 opens, the beast girl continues to wheeze. Amami immediately recognizes the signs, it's asthma and hives, her consciousness is impaired. And he can't feel her radial pulse anymore. Once systolic pressure drops under 80 mmHg, it turns gone, and it's even more dramatic in the body's bigger arteries. Femoral slips under mmHg, carotid under ~60. When they don't know her normal numbers, a systolic of 90 mmHg or less screams shock. This is anaphylaxis, anaphylactic shock, and it's your body launching a deadly overreaction to allergens, sparking symptoms across multiple organs. When it slams your blood pressure down and knocks you unconscious, it's called anaphylactic shock, and if nobody treats it fast, it can turn fatal in minutes, often triggered by foods, bee stings, or medications. A mommy spots a nasty wound on her leg, but the bleeding's barely there, so she drops everything and focuses on the allergic reaction first. He grabs an adrenaline self-injection kit and preps the shot, just a stopgap to slow the anaphylaxis flood and hold off shock until real medical treatment can arrive. He shoots adrenaline straight into her leg. Just like that, the beast folks burst onto the scene out of nowhere. The oldest of the group steps forward and tells everyone, "I'm from a village just up the road." He declares the beast girl is his granddaughter, and then he fires back, demanding to know what a mommy is doing there. Amami blurts out that he's doing emergency medical treatment, then orders them to drag everyone else to a safe, spotless spot. In the beast folks' village, where danger and destiny creep around every corner. Amami gently straps a pulse oximeter to the beast girl's hand, and the gadget instantly reads her blood oxygen levels and pulse through the skin. The reading jumps to 98%, and that surge of numbers tells him she's stable enough, no tracheal tube needed. Then he swings into action, getting ready to start a steroid drip. The elder stares, convinced his granddaughter's swollen skin and labored breathing are the forest god's curse. Then he whispers, if this human can cure her, then maybe it's a whole different thing, because those beast men are shouting for their chief right now, leaving the human with no choice but to become a true mage. As the mommy keeps pushing through his treatment, the beast girl's breathing finally evens out. She's finally out of immediate danger, and that leaves the chief completely stunned. 4 sharp drips snap through the room, like a countdown nobody can stop. As the beast girl snaps back to consciousness, her eyes flutter open, and you can see the moment awareness returns. She tries to rise on pure willpower, but her legs betray her, and she collapses. Mom steps up, leans in, and makes sure everything's okay. Even with everything she's pushed through, her leg injury still hammers her with pain. He demands a full, no-skips inspection, every detail checked right down to the last thread. The beast girl freezes, glaring at him with pure suspicion, but the slime pins her down and hauls her back onto the table. Then he finally lets out a defeated sigh and gives him the green light to carry on. Far off in a distant church, bells thunder and solemn prayers roll through the air like a living storm. Priest slams into a healing ritual, pouring power into the moment. He hurled magic onto the merchant's injured hand, and the pain instantly lit up in the air. A dazzling beam surges around the wound, sealing it in glowing light. Before long, the torn flesh man's body was completely gone. Merchant awestruck. He breathes out in relief and thanks everyone, still shocked he made it through that monster, while the priest modestly credits it all to divine guidance, saying the merchant's faith truly paid off. The tiny jingle of coins trickles out of his sleeve, and he mutters that maybe the merchant's crew could have been saved too if they'd gotten his healing even a moment sooner. He ends it with a cold, quiet snort, like their faith just wasn't strong enough. And man, talk about a gut punch, what a total pity that was. Back at the beast folk village, the beast girl's mommy finally completes his treatment. Everything runs smooth and the anesthesia hits just right. Her wound starts healing fast, powered by her unstoppable youth. Relief hits Amami hard the moment he confirms she's okay, and the beast girl can't stop staring in shock, then blurts out questions with pure curiosity, wondering if he's secretly a mage. Amami shuts the idea down fast, because if he really had magical powers, he'd have checked her pulse without fiddling with her nails or yanking off her collar like it was no big deal. But nope, he's a doctor, a regular general physician who works with knowledge, not sorcery. And the beast girl chimes in that anesthetic is healing magic and it's reserved for humans only. Her mommy snaps her back into reality, saying, "It's not magic, anyone can learn medicine no matter your race or rank," and the words hit hard. She swallows her pride and admits, "But I'm a beast folk slave, I don't think I'll ever be able to do something like that." She tells her with a warm smile that it's totally doable. If she wants to learn, he'll step in and they'll team up to do it together. He steps up and flashes his name. Yudo Amami then leans in and asks what she's called. She grins and says Corona. He greets her with a big, warm smile, telling her he can't wait to team up with her, and right then the chief walks in, while Amami steps forward and says his granddaughter is finally doing way better. The chief lets out a breath of relief, then snaps, "If those slave traders come back, we'll just hand Corona over again." Corona trembles with terror while the mommy gapes at the chief in pure disbelief, then the chief keeps going. Amami gets dragged for breaking the laws against stealing slaves, and he fires back that Corona was offered as the price to keep the village safe, while healing magic is something only the church is allowed to use. With the village broke and unable to pay, Amami can't hide behind, "I didn't know the law, not anymore." Corona pleads for her life, screaming that Amami didn't do a thing, but the chief shuts her down cold and reminds her over and over where her slave status ends. A mother, furious at the injustice, snaps that if someone's hurting in front of him, he doesn't get to choose, he has to help. The chief rips into him, roaring that magic is a power mightier than life itself, and now that Mommy is treated like a real threat, they decide she has to be wiped out. Before he can even react, a brutal crack explodes through the air, and the whole building erupts as a massive chimera smashes straight through the walls. Beast folks shriek out of pure terror, shouting that the forest god has come, and when they spot it has barged into their village, panic detonates everywhere. Even the beast man clutching the chief flees screams that this has never happened before and that their village is finished. Shaken to the core, the chief hurls blame at Amami, accusing him of unleashing this disaster. While chaos erupts all around, Amami squeezes his eyes shut and shields himself from the tearing debris as the whole scene spirals into full pandemonium. Chimera towers over them, its hulking body shaking with a fury it can barely hold back. Corona keeps staring, totally baffled, because it's clear something's supposed to attack but it never does. Amami clocks the slime signaling toward the creature's side and follows its lead without hesitation. Buried deep inside the chimera's body is a strange foreign object, and everyone's sure it's the spark that set its rampage loose. While everything spirals out of control, Amami scans the chaos in a heartbeat, locks onto a plan, and then, right in the middle of it all, he pitches the beast folk a proposal. He'll take on the chimera and tame it, but he wants one thing in return. He and the girl get to walk out free, yet some beast men scoff at the very idea of bargaining with a human. But the chief slams in and agrees, yeah, that's the price they'll swallow, and Amami spins back to those chimeras, wrenching her wound with her eyes. The creature growls menacingly as it studies the spot, deciding where to slice while the chief presses him, demanding to know what he's planning. Amami tells the chief he's going to rip that foreign thing out of the chimera's body, and the chief freaks out. He can't believe Amami would even dare to touch what they call the forest god. Amami then calls Corona for help, and she says yes on the spot. Right before the procedure, he pauses and remembers why he vowed to be a doctor. Medical care, he believes, can't be turned down without real cause. And in Japan, under Article 19, Paragraph 1 of the Medical Practitioners Act, doctors are required to accept requests for treatment unless there's a legitimate reason to refuse. He remembers that rule and digs in his heels, no matter if the person in front of him is a criminal, a beast, or even a god. If they're asking for help, he won't shut them down. That's what being a doctor really means, saving lives even when it breaks you. He pops open a vial of saline, douses the wound with alcohol, and the chimera screams in agony. The slime snaps into action, surging over the creature and locking it down tight with instant restraints. A mom shoots the slime a grateful smile, then pleads, hold the chimera still a bit longer as he keeps driving the treatment forward. He rubs on lidocaine, a local anesthetic that numbs everything and locks up the nerves, silencing both sensation and movement for the moment. The chimera's violent thrashing starts to fade and the slime finally loosens its grip as metazolam, the emergency clinic sedative meant to calm panicked patients, kicks in, dragging the creature into a deep, peaceful sleep. Amami grips his razor-tight. Sure, infection could come for him, but he has no option, so he carefully shaves the fur around the wound to see every detail. Staring at it like it just betrayed him, It's got a barbed edge like a fishhook, so you can't just rip it out. This should be done in a proper operating room, but here we don't have that kind of luxury. He swabs the whole area with povidone, and that sharp, unmistakable scent punches through the air. Worried mommy bandages the wound and dials Corona for backup. Inside the bag sits a surgical blade and he orders her to grip it with forceps and snap it onto a handle so she never has to touch the metal with her own hands. Corona follows his lead step by step without missing a beat. Her hands trembled as she clutched the forceps and he snapped a warning: this blade bites. She eases it into place, nudging it left until it snaps with a solid click, then gives it a final check. Done, and Amami shoots her a grateful thanks as she grabs the scalpel. He tells Corona he'll take the operation solo, then leans in and asks for one more thing. After it's over, tend to the wounded villagers, rinse their cuts with clean water and slip fresh clothes on them. With the chaos raging, he admits it might be too much to ask, and Corona drops her eyes, hesitating like she can't decide. Then he straightens up, determination blazing in his eyes. She nods, obeys his request and bolts to grab everything they'll need. While she's gone, Amami keeps his eyes on the sleeping chimera, steadies his breath, and waits in a silence so sharp it almost hurts, only the soft drip of antiseptic breaking the quiet. Fire burns behind his eyes as he lines up his tools, murmuring the oath that kicks off a surgeon's work, starting the foreign object removal. Chapter 3 opens. Sometime in the past, Corona once asked the chief about the forest god. The chief leaned in and said it was the forest god who kept their tribe safe, letting them live in the village without fear. With its razor claws, bared fangs, and a crushing curse, it sent every would-be attacker running for their lives. When Corona pressed the chief about the curse, he snapped that anyone who dared touch the forest god would get struck by it. He flat-out banned her from ever getting anywhere near that creature. Right now, Amami is still working on the chimera, focusing on that spear buried in its body, barbed like a fish hook, so pulling it out is almost impossible. He could spin it, drive the tip through the skin, snip off the barb, then yank it out clean, except this time the thing was too huge to pull off that trick. There's no choice, he has to slice it out. He steadies his scalpel. He leans in and pokes along the bumps under the skin, spotting exactly where the barbs are stuck. Then he slams a firm press and starts cutting. The blade cuts through flesh way easier than he thought, and for a split second, pure relief hits. With total focus, he reaches in and stretches the cut-up piece right toward one of those bulges. His scalpel snaps against something solid, metal, cold, and unyielding. He slices around the corner, and bam, a sharp glint flashes right before his eyes. His eyes pop wide when the barb finally shows up, and he can only pray there aren't any nasty fragments or splinters buried deeper inside. He twists around and scans for that second bar just outside the operation site. Beast folk huddle and stare, hearts pounding. One swears he can't see a thing but prays it's going well, while the chief snaps back that he can't tell either. If the human really pulls off saving their forest god, they'll still have to kill him afterward, because even a victory means the curse will nail him forever the moment he touches the god. Corona bursts back, lugging fresh water and wrapped cloth like she's on a mission. She tells her grandfather straight to his face that she'll heal every single person's wounds, even his. Meanwhile, a mom drops a truth bomb and exposes both barbs. He knows the minute that foreign thing is out, he'll have to stitch it all back up, so he can't waste a second because time is everything, and that proper table would have made this whole mess way easier. But he makes it work with whatever he's got. He clamps his grip tight on the spear's base, ready to yank it free. He took a deep breath, tensed up, and yanked hard. Chimera twitches just a little, but it's still out cold, locked in a drugged sleep. Amami freezes mid-breath, heart hammering, silently begging it not to wake, because he's convinced it was stabbed while it was out cold. He zooms back in and starts extracting again, slow, steady, and relentless. The barbed spear slips out of the chimera's flesh, and blood erupts as the final shard of metal tears free. Somewhere else, the chief snaps at Corona when she tries to bandage his wounds, roaring that she's nothing but a slave, and she'd better stay in her place. She fires back that sure, they might have forged her into a slave. She refuses to stay in one place, she gets what real suffering feels like, and she can't turn a blind eye to anyone hurting, not even him. The beast folk go dead silent. One of them whispers that the human mage gave the order, and another shrugs that this is probably way better than licking their wounds like animals. Then someone snaps, "My arm won't stop bleeding." At last every gaze snaps to the chief, then he pauses, letting the silence hit. He grits his teeth and reluctantly gives his consent. Then, as the last bit of the spear is pulled out of the chimera's body, Mommy lets out a huge breath of relief. She's finally safe. But almost instantly, a brutal rush of blood bursts from the wound and sprays over him. His mind spirals. If that spear clipped an artery, it's instant danger. He yanks the weapon free, grabs the gauze, and presses it down hard. Hands moved on pure instinct, and the beast folk beside them choked on the sight, blood gushing in terrifying waves. Panic crashed through the onlookers when they finally understood just how bad it was. The mom shoves gauze onto the wound and presses down hard, like she's sealing the hurt shut. He can feel the blood hammering under his fingertips. Somewhere deep inside, an artery is still spurting. He cranks up the pressure right at the source, and little by little the bleeding eases, until he finally lets himself breathe for a short, hard-earned moment. Corona's eyes lock on him and she blurts his name, voice shaking with dread. Then the chief whips around and snarls at her to stay back, yelling that even brushing the forest god's blood will curse her too. Still, she charges forward anyway. He can't waste time, he has to clamp the vessel and tie it off. He reaches for his instruments, grips a pair of forceps, and runs every step through his head with cold, clinical precision. Then, right as he's about to start, the light starts to die, the sky turns pitch black under thick clouds, and visibility crashes fast. He snaps a curse under his breath. He won't be able to see much longer, but he can't afford to delay. The bleeding has to stop now. He whips around to Corona and shouts for her help again. She freezes as her grandfather's warning slams into her head, "Don't ever go near the forest god." But then a second memory snaps in, her mommy's voice telling her medicine can be learned by anyone, and if she has the will, she can heal. His steady, unshakable voice cuts through her again, "We'll do it together." And right then, something shifts in her face. Steel resolve burns in her eyes as she mouths a silent apology to her grandfather, and he steps up to help, and Corona barrels to his side without a second to waste. Amami thanks her for the torchlight, then grabs her attention and begs her to help him snatch one of the surgical tools back. He pulls out a pair of hemostatic forceps and tells her they're basically the same kind of tool as the one she used earlier to snap on the scalpel blade, only these have a slim, curved tip. She darts her eyes over the instruments beside him, her hands shaking as she grabs a curved pair, then she blurts, "Is this the right one?" Amami nods fast, smiling faintly, clearly impressed that she nailed it from his messy description. He snatches the instrument from her, eyes laser-focused, those hemostatic forceps built to clamp and squeeze tissue shut to stop the bleeding with every shape in the book, hooked, grooved, curved, straight. Right now, he grips Pion forceps, the surgical hemostasis tool named for Jules-Émile Pion, a French doctor from the late 1800s. As storm clouds stack overhead and the dim light stutters over the blood-soaked chaos, Amami steadies his breathing. With Corona's help, he lines up the clamp on the vessel and keeps hammering away at the desperate mission to save the forest god, because Amami told Corona to grab that stick-like object sitting at the bottom right. She flipped it on and instantly knew it was the same magic tool he'd used back in the forest, so she shot the light straight into the open wound, then tossed the torch aside. With Corona keeping the light locked in place, Amami slowly raised the gauze, then the second he touched it, the arterial blood roared back, and he slammed firm pressure down with one hand while his other moved to stop the bleeding. After those brutal, tense seconds, everything finally calmed down. Corona stared in awe as Amami confirmed it. For now, the bleeding finally got under control, so he tore back to work on the wound, but Corona's eyes went wide the moment she looked over. Amami was soaked head to toe in blood. Even with the place filthy and disgusting, he stayed stone calm and pushed on with the procedure, zero hesitation. Even with everything falling apart, that doctor wouldn't bail on a patient. Corona just watched, still and stunned, as the mommy stitched the wound shut. In his head, he ran through the suture thread lineup, sizes from 10 down to 1, thick to thin, then the weird part, anything under 1 got flipped into 1 to 0 style, like 2 to 0, where the bigger the number, the thinner the thread. Doctors used absorbable stitches when the wound didn't need a later removal. Those threads broke down on their own through hydrolysis, while non-absorbable threads were saved for injuries that demanded long-term support until the patient fully recovered. He cinched the suture with razor-sharp precision, sealing the vessel tight, but he still knew one jostle could wake the bleeding back up. He moved like lightning, cinching the ligatures tight, tightening the tiny blood vessels with surgical precision. With the job finally done, he yanked the hemostatic forceps free and breathed for the first time, danger gone for the moment, but the wound wasn't safe yet. He still had to strip out the contaminated skin layers before closing up. An infection was waiting to strike, so he slid in a Penrose drain to keep everything draining right. A gentle tube made to stop fluids, pus, or blood from piling up after surgery. He broke down the plan for Corona and begged her to stay a little longer, and she just nodded and kept helping while the beast crew hung back at a distance, watching in silence. Amami weighed whether to keep tabs on the Chimera after his recovery, knowing it would be a nightmare since she couldn't stick around in the village for long. Then her mind flashed to that Penrose drain, named after American gynecologist Charles Bingham Penrose, and how absolutely crucial that little tool was for post-surgery care. Time slipped by, and before he could blink, dawn light poured through the trees, ending that brutal, sleepless night and dragging in morning. Corona praised him for pushing through, impressed by his endurance, while Amami, wiped out but finally breathing easy, thanked her for backing him up, admitting she'd fought just as hard. Even the forest god had held on through it all, and right on cue, the Chimera slowly opened its eyes. Seeing it, Amami finally crumpled onto the ground, announcing that the foreign object was completely removed. By the river at dawn, Corona jumped in and offered to wash Amami's clothes, and then, before she could, told him to rest, but he wouldn't, already scrubbing the blood off his own body. And he pushed to make sure they stayed uninfected, warning them about deadly viruses, and that weirded Corona out completely. Ami stormed up to her, tossed out a quick apology, and then leaned in to study her eyes. He realized they couldn't just clean the rest of their bodies, they had to rinse their eyes too. Corona said she usually washed her face there, but the moment water touched her eyes it burned, and Amami shot back that river water wasn't exactly clean, so they'd have to wash properly later. Right now though, it was all about getting the blood out of their eyes, and he warned her it would sting, so she'd have to grit her teeth and endure it. He realized that if a patient's blood ever splashed into the doctor's eyes during surgeries, it could pass deadly pathogens, so goggles were the smart safety move, and after it was all done he praised Corona, and Corona snapped back that only human aristocrats got proper baths, not the kind of river washing he'd suggested. Amami's mind raced over the word aristocrats, but right before he could say another thing, Corona spotted the blood on him and ordered the viruses cleaned off. Then, out of nowhere, Amami's eyes rolled back and he collapsed. Corona screamed in panic, and then everything crumpled, dropping straight into the river. Later, inside the Beastfolk chief's house, Amami, now wearing the clothes the chief gave him, sat down and talked straight with the chief, telling him he was ready to take Corona and hit the road. Thinking he finally had it figured out, then realizing the humans who came before could swing back again, and this time they'd try to take her. The chief stared down and told them it was brutal. Corona's mother died as she brought her into the world, and her father bled out from injuries he took while hunting, and he said that's just how their kind gets wiped out. Even Amami knows the truth, giving birth or chasing food can steal their life in an instant. He remembered that back in 1899, Japan was losing mothers at a terrifying 409. 8 per 100,000 births, then medicine clawed it down to about 3, and the chief warned Amami that everything would change only if a healing mage actually lived in the village, which was rare as miracles. So it hit him hard when he thought of the real world, like Sierra Leone, where the number skyrocketed to around 1,300 per 100,000 women. The chief didn't stop. He said only a handful of kids were still left in the village, and even the forest god was hurt, too. Their home was done for, and the humans would come and claim it sooner or later. Maybe Corona had to slip out before it all went down, like fate was pulling the strings. When Corona snapped awake, the chief's jaw dropped. He told her he'd thrown everything he had at saving the village, but the brutal truth still crushed him. A woman in the islands of Japan suddenly thought of the mayor, then marched up to the chief and told him, straight up, that nobody deserved to be left behind. And he knew there had to be another way out. He leaned in and begged the chief to stop shouldering it all by himself. Corona grabbed her grandfather's worry and promised him she'd return. She thanked him for saving the villagers and the forest god too, then looked him in the eye and promised she'd help Amami with his work. She'd finally learn how to heal the injured and sick. Then one day she'd come back to the village, and the chief's eyes would well up with emotion, while Amami hurried over asking where he could get the tools they'd need to treat everyone. The chief said he'd once wandered into the human lands, but the mommy snapped back, dead sure he'd never fit in with humans in this world. Most of all, he was desperate to stay anywhere Corona could be safe. He leaned in and asked, "Is there a place where tons of different races live side by side?" Inside the World Tree Cave deep in the Elven lands, green life crept over every street and clung to the buildings like it was taking the city back, entwining every single surface with wild green life. Before an elven crowd, two mysterious figures stood side by side. A bearded guy and a black-haired woman stood there. The priest stood up and declared that these two mages were about to be ripped from their homeland and sent to master the healing arts. Princess Yuno stood there, eyes heavy, realizing one brutal truth: other races could do all kinds of magic, but only humans could wield healing magic. She handed them the mission with full faith: do everything you can. The priest nodded right away, sealing it with a proud, shared belief. Standing shoulder to shoulder with the princess, Queen Melina stared into the word faith, wrestling with what it really meant. Because humans hit them with crushing tariffs, then demanded their healing magic like a bargaining chip and a political weapon. But she couldn't deny the brutal truth: too many injuries and sicknesses in this world were only survivable with magic. She couldn't stop wondering what it would feel like if her people could heal themselves, no help needed. Elsewhere in the Beast Folk village, everyone packed in as Amami and Corona got ready to leave. The Beast Folk flooded them with gratitude and respect, praising Amami's skills even though he was human, and Amami waved off their apologies like it was nothing. And he urged them to keep hammering at what he taught: clean those wounds, wash your hands, and gargle like clockwork, and the villagers nodded along with huge enthusiasm as the chief stepped closer. And he made it crystal clear: if they took the western road, they'd crash straight into the demon realm, no humans in sight, just a mix of races living side by side. Amami shot him a grateful nod, then the chief leaned in and told Corona, "Once we're out of the village, call Amami Master." After all, she was a beast person walking with a human, so that simple respect kept everyone safe. Corona brightened up and agreed right away, while Amami squinted at the title like it sounded a little weird, but she still nodded and accepted it. They raised their hands and shouted goodbye to the villagers, then launched off down the road. The chief couldn't hold himself together. He watched them vanish, his vision swimming with tears, and his mind flashed back to the day Corona's father left the exact same way. As they pushed deeper into the road, a mom suddenly popped up, face tight with worry. "He told me that the day before, when he went to check the forest god's wound, the creature was already gone, vanished without a trace." He knew he couldn't keep going with the follow-up for long, but the real fear gnawed at him. If that wound sealed up into a dead hollow, it could rot from the inside. He'd seen it before. Depending on how a skin cut gets stitched and how it heals, a pocket can form beneath the skin that never belonged there, and then fluid and pus gather there, turning into infection and stopping the healing cold. Suddenly, Corona shot forward as the chimera burst out from behind the trees. The creature collapsed right in front of them, and Amami came sprinting straight over. He examined the wound and froze. Already it was sealing up, fresh new hair sprouting right over the damage. He couldn't believe it, thinking how badly he'd love to turn this bizarre miracle into a medical paper, even as he knew that dream was gone for good. Then he carefully stroked the chimera, filled with regret that he couldn't keep watching its recovery, just hoping it stayed safe, unbroken, and completely unharmed. As Amami and Corona started slipping out, the chimera snapped right behind them. Amami spun around, stunned, and realized it wanted to walk right beside them. Then the creature's face lit up. It nuzzled against him like it knew him, and just like that, their brand new journey tore on, now with the chimera right beside them. A mom blurted out, "Are we really safe bringing this chimera along when everyone treats it like the god of the forest?" Corona panicked and wouldn't say a word. Amami figured it was safer if they stayed together, betting that the crew would dodge another hit from those weird human attackers. Then the slime got jealous fast, yanking at his hair like it wanted all the attention for itself. Amami shot an apology his way and showered the slimes with some warmth too, and right on cue, Corona, still seething with jealousy, lunged in and wrapped her arms around him. And that's how he ended up patting her head too. After that, Amami blurted out that it was time to move on, even though he'd barely learned a thing about this world yet. At least he wouldn't be stranded in it alone anymore. Meanwhile, deep in the World Tree Cave, Krenelson met the priest and faced a heavy crest. Ekrest brushed it off like it wasn't really a conversation at all, more like a straight-up warning thrown in his face. Living the same life in tree caves, they weren't alone. There were old-timers who'd endured for ages, soaking up so much wisdom it practically shone. Ikres ordered him that if he caught anyone trying to steal the human's healing magic, he had to shut them down immediately. She made it crystal clear. Healing magic was a gift humans alone could wield, and that magic was the engine of their prosperity, stuffing their hands with wealth, wrapping the world in peace, and forcing even other races to respect them. In their homeland, people lived safe and satisfied, all thanks to that crest. But if healing magic ever seeped into foreign lands, the warning said their whole nation could disappear in the blink of an eye. For as long as the earth has breathed, the weak have always been shoved down, crushed, oppressed, and hunted. Long ago, humans had no power, only suffering at the hands of demihumans, demons that stalked their knights, and dragons that drove them into exile. Then, fueled by mercy, God reached out and dropped a tiny piece of his miracle healing magic into their hands. Later, a deadly plague swallowed the world and hunted every living thing, so humans grabbed that power to stay alive and multiplied faster than anyone else ever could. Over time, some humans started to believe that if God picked you to wield healing magic, then you were the real deal, God's chosen ruler, destined to command the very earth. But God's heart soured with their arrogance. He hadn't given humanity healing magic to rule the world, and now he refused to hand out his divine miracles so freely anymore. Instead, he decided to hand the vulnerable a whole different kind of power. He believed in knowledge you could forge with human reason alone, no gods, no magic, so he sent someone different to those fragile lives he was going after. That's General Physician Yuro Amami. This is the story of a man who throws a spotlight on the world with nothing but the power of medicine. Chapter 5 begins in the Elvenlands, where Je questioned Krenelson's decision. Krenelson, tense and determined, reminded her that she had seen it herself. Neither magic nor herbs could cure the affliction they faced. It was beyond salvation. Je froze for a beat, realizing every move would light up a war with the humans, and even if they slipped back home, the blame would land on them hard, with the harshest consequences waiting. He clenched his teeth. Krenelson insisted that if they admitted the cure was gone, they'd get marched straight to the executioner, exactly what neither of them wanted. So he snapped that they were leaving right now, no more waiting. Elsewhere, Corona sank into the warmth of a bonfire, her face glowing in the firelight, while chaos raged everywhere else right out of her sight. Back at the World Tree, Queen Melina sat on her throne, holding court with nothing but pure power and presence, like the whole world was listening. Princess Yuno burst into the hall, gasping hard and panicked, then forced herself to straighten up and address her mother properly, only to report that the humans and the healing mages had already run off. Queen Melina froze on the spot, and her guards all snapped their eyes to her for orders. She drew in a slow breath, letting the shock of the news crush down on her shoulders. Yuno snapped that the dragon folk would hear about it soon enough, and once that truth hit, Queen Melina just sighed, then vowed she'd go report it herself. 2 dragon folks loomed in front of them, and Melina stormed in, bowed so low it almost touched the floor, and apologized like her heart was on the line. Then she blurted out she'd rushed to report the escape before rumors took off, and the black-haired dragon nodded at her choice. Queen Melina's stomach dropped as she realized the dragons already had the answer, and she'd been smart to listen, because if not, they would have stumbled into something nasty. The black-haired dragon flicked a gesture, demanding she be let through. In the dragon folk's grand office, the ruler, an imposing dragon with piercing eyes, squared off against Queen Melina and Princess Yano. Cold, commanding, he demanded to know straight up how they planned to take responsibility for what they'd done. Meanwhile, deep in the forest, the trees whispered as Mommy was crouched over the chimera's wound, tending it like her life depended on it. He inspected the stitches like a hawk and saw they'd healed up clean, no gaps, just a solid closure, though the surrounding hair would take its sweet time to come back. Then he apologized to the chimera for shaving the spot earlier, and the creature rewarded him by licking his face like it was saying, "It's okay, I've got you." Corona stared at her own still-bandaged leg and swallowed a wave of disappointment, but Amami shot in fast with reassurance. Yeah, it's normal because the chimera's regeneration is so wild that her slow healing still makes total sense. He said it would be a fascinating case report, an account of how her recovery went and how injuries like hers could be treated. Then Corona tilted her head, totally lost at the unfamiliar words, and just as Amami was about to explain, a sudden rustling shattered the silence. Out of the shadows, a snake exploded into view and snapped toward Corona. Both of them shrieked, and when it lunged, it tore at her collar and ripped it right apart. Then it shot off and vanished in a flash, leaving that mom startled but totally unharmed, realizing the snake had slipped her collar free instead of striking, like it was trying to make things right after it hurt her leg. Corona caught the meaning of that gesture and flashed a warm, knowing smile. She hugged the serpent tight and whispered her thanks to the forest god, until a sudden slime yank tore the moment away, pulling at Amami's cheek. He spun around, baffled, and demanded what was wrong, while the slime desperately jabbed its slimy arm toward the woods, right at a terrifying sound creeping closer. Princess Yuno came crashing through the forest trails, with a pack of black wolves snapping at her heels. She whipped around and hurled a spell, right as her words died in her mouth. A wolf exploded forward and clamped its teeth on her head. She reeled back, and then she realized the wolves had closed in on all sides. Panic and dread swallowed her whole as she realized the worst timing ever. Black wolves had just found her, and she still had to drag the healing mages back alive. The wolves inched forward, and their snarls ripped through the trees like a warning. Right then, the chimera barreled in with a mother on its back, slammed down hard and crushed several wolves under its bulk, sending the rest scattering in every direction. The survivors screamed and scattered into the trees, and the clearing fell silent again. Amami sprinted to Unicide, swaying as she closed the distance. Her eyes swam as she finally spotted the chimera, part beast, part person, and part human, all crashing into view. Right before the darkness swallowed her, she clung to one crazy thought. She swore she was seeing the forest god. She crumpled to the floor. Right before she could hit the ground, Amami swooped in and caught her. He sized up the chaos in a heartbeat and knew she needed help right now, so Corona panicked and demanded what to do. Then Amami told her to get him to help lay the woman down. He heard a soft pat-pat and snapped his head around. There it was, the slime reshaping itself into a comfy pillow, and he just couldn't help asking, "Are you sure?" Then he carefully settled Princess Yuno's head on it and leaned in, scanning every injury, starting with the worst one, before using the last drops of his saline water to clean it with steady hands. He shoved gauze against the wound to slam the bleeding, then kept checking like any second might be the last. He watched the bleeding keep crawling on, and that told him E was the answer, so he ordered Corona to go grab it. She carried in a vial and he checked it twice until it matched lidocaine with epinephrine. And then the memory hit him. Adding that vasoconstrictor would squeeze the blood vessels shut, slash the bleeding, and still knock you out with anesthesia. Drawing the cure straight into a syringe. The mommy pressed it straight into the wound, driving it deep into the tissue instead of just treating the skin's surface. Corona just watched, eyes locked on him as he worked in silence. Soon he shoved the gauze back down hard. This time the bleeding finally died out completely. Feel satisfied now. He jumped to the next step and snapped the skin stapler shut, replaying the medical logic in his head. This kind of stapler seals outside wounds fast, and unlike old-school sutures, it sinks less strain into the skin while keeping the microcirculation running. And minimized tissue tension, letting procedures run faster. But he snapped back to the truth. If bones, nerves, or major vessels sat within 5 millimeters of the skin, those tools wouldn't touch it, so he slowly lined up the wound's edges. And he hammered in the staples, one by one, like he meant business. Corona's eyes popped wide as she watched the wound stitch itself shut, clean and perfect in seconds, like the tool was magic, sealing everything with terrifying ease. Amami just shrugged and explained that it had only been shallow and the surrounding tissue was already clean, so the whole thing was almost straightforward. While he scrubbed his tools and tossed the leftovers, he suddenly noticed the shelves were getting bare, and that worry hit hard. He had to refill everything fast or else. Later on, Princess Yuno finally stirred, her eyes fluttering open one slow blink at a time. The very first thing she noticed was a slime squirming right beside her. She gasped in shock. Then she shrieked again when she saw that massive chimera looming nearby, and her panic spiked when Amami and Corona came rushing over. Corona even grinned in relief, saying she'd finally snapped back to consciousness. But when Yuno reached for her own head, the wound flared with brutal pain, and Corona snapped into action, warning her not to touch it, and Amami backed her up, telling her to stay perfectly still and just rest. He'd already patched up every injury, but now they had to wait for her body to heal. Yuno checked her head and saw the bleeding had finally stopped for good. Then Amami told her he'd stitched the wound shut with his own hands. Sure, a tiny scar might show, but she could bury it under her hair. Her eyes went wide with disbelief. A human had healed her without magic, and it left her utterly shaken. She remembered just how badly she'd been bleeding. And he couldn't help wondering if he was a healing mage too. Mommy hesitated just as he was about to speak. Corona stepped in with pride and declared, "My master isn't like other humans, he's the greatest healing mage ever." Amami's smile flickered faintly because she knew that bit wasn't exactly true. Yet he quietly swore he'd always throw himself in the way of anyone in need. Princess Yuno, touched by their kindness, started to question whether people should lean less on the church's rules and instead trust the forest god's guidance. Chimera jerked its head, totally lost, like it couldn't make sense of what she was saying. Drenched in tears, Princess Yuno spun back toward Amami, shaking with desperation as she begged the healing mage to save everyone, and Amami practically blurted in shock before snapping into agreement. Yuno then spills how dire her homeland's crisis has become, and Amami stays calm as he asks where he's meant to go. And right there, tears brim in Princess Yuno's eyes as she frantically wipes them away. She tells him he has to rush to her homeland and get her hands on a cure for the blood-spewing sickness, that terrifying disease that's tearing people apart. Amami just listens while Corona blurts out that the sickness starts as gut pain, then smashes into violent vomiting of blood. So many in her village are already dead. Princess Yuno chimes in with the worst part. Victims' stools turn jet black, and the poor souls keep wasting away day after day. Amami clocks the signs right away. These aren't normal stomach problems, it's gastrointestinal bleeding, and those tar-black stools scream that the blood is coming from the upper gut. He breaks it all down in his head. The gut starts at the mouth, runs through the esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, and ends at the anus, and the upper zone is the esophagus, stomach, and duodenum. So yeah, he's pretty sure the answer is hiding there, but he won't know for real until he checks it himself. So Amami grits his teeth and they waste no time, setting out right away. He leans in and asks the Chimera, "Can we ride your back again?" The Chimera lets out a happy growl, practically buzzing with excitement. And just like that, everybody scrambles aboard. Then the Chimera blasts off with earth-shaking, powerful strides. Beating its wings hard, it tore through the sky straight toward the World Tree Cave. As they climb higher, Amami and the others gasp at the jaw-dropping world sprawled below them, endless landscapes stretching out as far as the eye can see. Meanwhile, inside the dragon folks' office, a dragon man leans in toward number 2 and demands, "Do you really think Princess Yuno will pull the healing mages back?" Number 2 shoots back with total confidence. She'll do it, even if desperation is the only thing driving her and even if she has no choice. Her mother and every soul in their land will be slaughtered. Queen Melina can't stop thinking about her daughter, and worry presses so hard on her heart it feels like it might break. Okusawa flat-out rejected the captain's offer to go fishing tomorrow, and he shut down every idea that a few drinks and a little sleep could magically fix him. He nodded and promised to be careful when the captain warned that rain was about to roll in. Then he stared around, frantic, and couldn't figure out where Amami had vanished to. Amami and the others stormed into the elven domain, escorted straight to their towering castle, the stronghold where the elves trapped by the blood-spewing sickness were kept. You know, the one who'd been with them finally blurted it out. She'd been hiding a life-changing truth, scared she'd lose everything if she said it. If she'd spilled the truth back then, they never would have shown up, and now she regrets that decision, realizing it's a pretty weak way to pay back all the help they gave her. Visitors stared at the castle, struck dumb with awe. Figure burst out from the inside. Tensions snapped in the air when the dragon folk stopped right in front of Amami and his crew. Alex sneered the moment Yuno showed up, calling her a liar and a fool for bringing a chimera, then accusing her of coming to steal their souls, while Yuno fired back that the forest god had sent them. And she showed up right on time, dragging a mage with her, begging with shaking words for her mother's freedom. The moment they started talking, buried grudges erupted like poison, finally finding the light. Yuno snapped that sure, the elves were grateful for the dragon folk's strength and the safety it brought, but the dragon folk had still shattered there. She seized her mother as a hostage, dragged her through torment, and swore they'd broken the reciprocal life the World Tree's land had promised her. She leaned in and dared Alec, of all people, to finally feel what it's like to watch someone you love slip into suffering. Alec snapped back, calling it systemic injustice, dragon folk were forced to bleed through pain and death, while humans hoarded healing magic just to get richer, then treated dragon folk like trash with cold, hateful contempt. He shut down the idea that dragon folk should bow just because humans thought they got something out of it. He said the only answer was pay back every injury with the same until humans finally learned to care. His words turned into a threat. He promised the favor would come back as pain and death. As Alec geared up to keep that vow, the dragonfolk gathered around him and their faces turned grim and cold, like night settling in. Queen Melina tried to step in, but Yuno cut her off, pounding his point with one demand. Her mother's pain wouldn't be swept under the rug. Alec snapped his magic on and flames surged up to swallow his body, raw power bursting out, making Amami's eyes go wide and throwing Yuno into instant panic as this whole thing threatened to tip straight into violence. A violent burst of white smoke detonated over the bridge, swallowing everything in a blinding fog that erased sight. Behind Alex, the dragon folk stood frozen stiff while Amami and his crew threw up their hands, shielding their eyes from the blast. When the smoke finally blew away, a hulking black dragon loomed right in front of them. Amami's eyes popped wide the moment she saw it. The dragon erupted in a deafening roar that shook the air. He unleashed a searing burst of energy, charging straight toward Amami. The slime hurled itself ahead, exploding across the ground as it spread. As a shield slammed into the beam, the violent, earth-shaking blast of water. The attack fizzled out, and the shockwave drenched everyone standing nearby. Worn out, the slime crumpled to the ground, and that soaked but untouched Mommy quietly sent her thanks with nothing but a grateful look. Just as Alec tried to fire off his next strike, the chimera lunged forward like a bullet. They slammed into the dragon with raw fury, one brutal clash on the bridge, claws and blazing fire roaring against teeth and muscle as the whole span rattled. As the showdown hit its breaking point, Amami shot his hand up like a command and every fighter froze mid-swing, no matter how hard Corona protested, because Amami strode forward anyway, vowing he'd hunt down the one blasted by the blood-spewing sickness and get them treated. Alec stared in disbelief at his calm defiance, while Princess Yuno watched in silent awe, struck by how unshakable his resolve was, because to a mom, race and origin don't matter at all, only that someone's sick and needs help. Just as Alec opened his mouth, a booming voice cut through the air and shouted his name. Berserk Dragon Queen Lindworm, ruler of the dragonfolk, suddenly burst into view. The moment she appeared, the air turned oppressive. Princess Yuno let out a heavy sigh, realizing the queen had come herself. Queen Melina watched with bated breath as Lindworm strode right past her. She confronted Alec, furious for how he attacked the very person who'd come to cure her. Alec jolted back into his human form, gasping as he shouted for his mother, stunned by what he'd just become, while Lindworm's eyes snapped to the chimera, warning him he had no idea what he was up against. Then, with a calm that felt dangerous, she strode toward the group, like every step she took had heavy meaning. Her aura hit like a thunderclap, and Amami and the others felt their hearts start to hammer. Lindworm snapped his arm forward and reached out, like he was about to grab fate by the throat. Grabbed the slime's hand. He greeted them like he'd just run into an old friend he never forgot. The slime shuddered with pure excitement, and Lindworm let out this tiny laugh as she turned and addressed the mommy. Her voice turned cold and serious as she owned every bit of the conflict, then poured out her deepest, heartfelt apologies. She then ordered her subordinates to free Queen Melina, choking out an apology for her son's behavior, and when Alec erupted in outrage at his mother's sudden humility, Lindworm cut him off, then slammed her hand over her mouth. Blood gushed from between her fingers. Amami and Alec both froze, their breath caught. She crumpled to her knees in pure horror. Amam bolted forward the second she saw the signs, the blood-choking sickness. This was the patient they'd raced here to save. Without a single pause, the mom barked that she needed to be moved somewhere she could crash right away. Yuno snapped into action, and Corona started grabbing their stuff. Panic and rage surged through Alec as he lunged to stop him, screaming that no human had the right to touch his mother. His mommy punched him hard in the gut, knocking the words right out of his mouth. He barked in order for him to move. Inside the elven castle, two dragonfolk guarded the door while a mother figure interrogated Queen Lindworm in a nearby chamber. He gently raised her eyelid and stared at the pale rim underneath, and the lack of color screamed the truth, conjunctival rim pallor. Queen Melina, Princess Yano and the chimera stood frozen nearby while he examined the sign. In a healthy person, the outer edge of the lower eyelid looks bright red with clear capillaries while the inner side stays white, but with anemia, both edges fade into the same washed-out pallor. What he saw didn't just scare him, it snapped his suspicion into place. Queen Lintworm wasn't cursed by some fairy tale magic at all, her illness lived in her blood, plain and brutal. Amami told him that if you read the queen's symptoms like a human's, it came down to one thing, anemia. And depending on how bad it was, she might need a blood transfusion. He laid it out bluntly, they'd shove someone else's blood into her body to patch the gap of what she was missing. The elves froze in confusion, then snapped into alarm. Queen Melina leaned in and told them that long ago, transfusions like this had already been tried. Most who tried those trials ended in brutal, unforgettable deaths, so they got banned fast. Amami stared in silence, piecing it together, wrong blood types or nasty infections from sloppy hygiene. He knew human blood didn't come in just one kind, and if you mixed the wrong type it could tear red blood cells apart and trigger a brutal chain reaction. Fever, chills, choking for air, stomach pain, vomiting, dangerously low blood pressure, and hemoglobin in the urine. So even with today's science, the worst cases still killed you. That ban finally made perfect sense. Princess Uno wailed that the world tree's healing leaves, the ones that supposedly cured every sickness, didn't even stir the queen's illness, and Amami fired back, what about them? He listened to Queen Melina spill the truth, those leaves could tame fever and melt pain, and the elves had built their whole nation around the tree for exactly that reason. Then he picked one up and studied it, sniffing it like it might reveal a secret. Puzzled over the chemical secrets, he finally blurted out, "Wait, did you ever try using the tree's bark instead of the leaf?" Princess Yuno looked genuinely stunned and confessed they'd never tried it, and Amami even threw out a theory that the bark might hide compounds like aspirin or quinine. Meanwhile, Alec, impatient, fuming, pushed for answers, demanding an explanation if he had any clue that could help. His mom dug through his bag and shoved a tiny medicine container into his hands, while the dragons and elves stared back with cautious, curious eyes. Inside, those tablets were aspirin, the medicine that crushes fever and dulls pain. He laid it all out, warning him that while it worked like magic, and it was dangerous for anyone with the queen's condition, because it could make patients bleed way faster and even tear up the stomach lining. Amami couldn't stop thinking about how this medicine was born, how Hippocrates once pulled salicylic acid from willow bark to slam fever and dull pain, then watched it wreck people's stomachs, which is why aspirin was forged to keep the bite without the damage, even though it still risked stomach irritation. Then his thoughts snapped to quinine, that old anti-fever alkaloid from cinchona bark that once crushed malaria, turning into tonics meant to survive that disease, though today most Japan-made tonics don't even use it anymore. And just as that realization hit, Corona raised a fresh alarm. If something makes you bleed and tears up your stomach, doesn't that mean it'll end up doing way more harm than good? Amami nodded, because even if the elves were desperate enough to cling to the world tree's leaves for relief, nobody knew if it would actually help or if it would just sink their queen deeper into trouble, so he ordered them to stop using the leaves right now. Alec, desperate for the truth, demanded answers. Was it really that way? A mom assured him it probably was, but Alec couldn't fully trust it without proper testing. Rage burned in Alec's chest as he begged for answers, demanding a solution right then. Amami ran through every grim possibility. If the queen was passing black stools and vomiting blood, the bleeding had to be tearing somewhere in the upper gut, so he'd need an endoscope to find the exact source and stop it. The dragon folk nearby totally misread him, thinking he was about to cast a spell, and Corona even asked what an endoscope was. Amami told her it was a medical tool that lets you peer inside the body from the outside, and if a pro handles it right, it can even seal internal bleeding. Princess Yuno stared in disbelief, because this kind of tool and technique was nothing like any magic she'd ever heard of. Amami just nodded and admitted, yeah, out there in their world, his knowledge probably feels like it fell from another universe. Queen Lintworm, weak in body but sharp in mind, studied him with burning curiosity. She said it clicked for her, so that's why the elder slime had followed him, calling this mysterious visitor from far beyond. The mom locked eyes with her, totally thrown off by what that look even meant. Then Lindworm's voice went soft and solemn as she turned to Alec and delivered her farewell. Her power started to slip away, like the life was draining out of her. Even after she admitted she wasn't ready to die, she swallowed the truth. There was nothing left to change, no way forward, just fate waiting to be faced. Alec gripped her hand as tears poured from his eyes while she begged forgiveness to the elven people for the pain her choices had unleashed. Her grip tightened for a split second. Tears surged up in her eyes. Then her hand went limp, Alex's cries burst through the room and Corona spun around like a panicked mom, praying for anything to save her. Begging because what else could they possibly do? Amami's mind was sprinting because he only had a limited stash of vanaprasine, a modern acid suppressor, and he wasn't sure it'd be enough on its own. No instruments meant no surgery and he couldn't just crack open the queen and guess in the dark. So he mapped it out step by step. During digestion, the stomach spews acid that can wreck the lining or even trigger reflux esophagitis and ulcers. And the big culprit behind that acid surge was the gastric proton pump. That's why meds like proton pump inhibitors and potassium competitive blockers like vanaprasine crushed the pump's activity to stop the damage before it spread. As the pieces finally clicked in his head, his face lit up with a sudden realization and the chimera, watching like a hawk, caught the shift instantly. Amami's eyes blazed with pure determination and he spun toward the others. Still insisting there had to be a way to save the queen, somehow even now. Alec clung to his mother's hand like it was the last rope on earth, while Corona stared at Amami, hope sparking in her eyes for the very first time, right through the crushing despair. Right at the start of Chapter 7, Alec's heart drops when he hears there may be a way to save his mom. She confirms it's possible, but she makes him pause and says there's one thing she has to check first: the wound on Alec's hand. Mom leans in and tells everyone straight up, Alec only got that wound when he was stuck in his dragon form. And because it morphs to his shape, that clue might be the one thing that can save his mother. Even without an endoscope to peek inside Amami, he figures she's a giant dragon, so if anyone can make it work from the inside, it's him. He tells them he's going straight into Queen Lintworm's upper gastrointestinal tract himself, and he'll stop the internal bleeding right then while she stays locked in her dragon form. Alec and the queen are stunned by his bold proposal, and Amami snaps that if they're going to do this, he'll need all of them working together. Alec snarls in fury and declares, I can't trust humans. And he would never, ever let anyone step into his mother's body. Mom tells him, if you don't trust Alec, I'll track every single move, then the second you think you've been tricked, you can do whatever you want to that, Mom. Alec, caught off guard by Mom's iron resolve, nods at the courage she's shown, and can't help wondering if she's afraid of anything at all. Mom straight up admits it, and he's terrified of someone dying on his watch because he couldn't save them. His raw honesty hits Alex so hard he can't even speak. As Queen Lintworm smiles softly. Outside, with green jungle all around, Amami and the rest scramble up a towering, massive tree. Amami gapes at the endless steps and Corona keeps reassuring him, we're almost there, she says as the observation deck is finally in reach. When they finally climb to the top, they're met with a huge, wide-open stretch of space. Amami gapes at its massive size, then waves like crazy at Alec and Queen Lintworm. Asking if they really need all that space, Princess Yuno drops the answer, yes, we absolutely do. An elf shoved a rope into Amami's hands and said it was his for the job. Amami nodded, thanked him, and praised how ridiculously strong the thing was. Alec stares him down hard, eyes narrowing like he's trying to catch every move. His mom snapped him back to it. Earlier he'd asked for something with a big, sharp blade and Alex had promised, don't worry, I'll handle it. Alec shows it off by slashing his own hand open with his horn, letting the blood spill onto the ground. The blazing light swallows the blood whole, and it hardens into a razor-sharp sword. Alec boots it up into the air and shoves it into Amami's hands, saying it's a blade forged from his own blood and raw magic. Then Amami grabs it. Olex's face gave it away, pure determination blazing in his eyes, and reminds him to heal that hand, but Alec just slips away in silence, while a nearby dragon man grumbles that he's being rude and someone else hands Amami a towel. Curious, Amami blurts out, so what even is magical power? And Queen Lintworm leans in to explain that it's born when the mana hanging in the air gets converted. Different races and even different people make it in wildly different ways. So there's no one simple definition, and for Olex, she says it comes out as he channels magic into the resin he chews nonstop, while Amami stares, thinking hard about the idea of. He treats it like a shadowy power. No matter how hard he studies, it keeps spitting out secrets, so he steadies his nerves and moves forward. Then Amami unsheathes the sword. Its blade erupts in a fiery burst. Flames erupt in a furious burst, then snap down from chaos, slowly sharpening into a clear, unmistakable shape. Princess Yuno watches Alec, a fire dragon, and realizes he's sealed the power of fire inside it, while Amami leans in, eyes sparkling, utterly captivated by the. Before sliding it back into its sheath again. He's sure this sword could outclass any regular blade, and he's already clocked that everything's ready. He braces himself for whatever hits next. Alec whips his gaze to his mother and shoots her a quick nod. Queen Lindworm unleashes a shocking transformation. Her body rockets upward in a blinding burst of white smoke, before burst forth as a massive, terrifying dragon. That massive branch under her feet shudders and trembles under the crushing weight of her body. Her massive presence towers over the room, swallowing everyone in her shadow. And Amami and the others just freeze in awe, staring at her massive size and royal, commanding presence. Amami beams with pure admiration, stunned by the life buzzing off her, and Corona snaps, calling out to her master with real worry. Done speechless by what he just saw, Alex watches Amami's smiling face in total silence, eyes narrowing hard as she turns and starts moving to begin. A mother rushes over to check on Corona, gripping a heavy rope and refusing to look away. She swears she's okay, and she insists on helping anyway. Amami orders Queen Lindworm to lie on her left side, but just as she's about to obey, she suddenly hurls up blood right there out of nowhere. Crimson blood splashes and hisses across the stone, and the mom instantly realizes the floor is starting to melt. It hits him like a punch. This isn't just blood, it's a deadly mix laced with scorching stomach acid strong enough to melt solid rock. He realizes that if he'd gone in through her mouth, the easiest path, he'd have set off her gag reflex and been soaked in that corrosive fluid, killing him for sure. He pauses for a quick thought about the gag reflex, the instinct that snaps on the moment the back of your throat or the root of your tongue gets touched, the very same reflex that makes you retch when fingers go too far into your mouth. That's why mouth-based endoscopic exams feel so brutally unpleasant. Alex stares coldly, mocking Amami's ignorance about dragon biology, especially how dragon blood burns like scalding lava. Amam blurts an apology, but her resolve doesn't budge. She insists it's still too early to quit. Then he leans in and asks what else he should know about Dragonfoe. Irritation flares in Alec, but for his mother's sake he gives in and pushes on, explaining it all in full. He tells him dragons keep glowing stones in their throats, never ever touch them because one wrong move means death, and then adds the real nightmare. A dragon's stomach can melt anything in an instant, so if you fall into those digestive fluids, you're gone. Mommy hears the warning, nods, and thanks him with real gratitude. Corona snaps out a question, "Where do you want the rope tied?" And Mommy grins and praises her fast, flawless work. He orders her to clamp it right up by the queen's nose. Corona hesitates when she spots what he's trying to do, slide right in through the nostril, and Amami quickly runs through his logic in her head. Transnasal endoscopy slips in through the nose, dodges the root of the tongue so the gag reflex barely gets a chance. Plus newer tech and sharper images made it the go-to for routine checks, except when doctors need ultra-detailed internal views like catching early-stage cancer. And then, Corona tightens the rope hard and lets the attached bag drop. At last, the countdown to Amami's risky procedure is done. She grabs the rope, fires off a signal to Corona, and the moment is officially underway. Sharp, forceful breath blasts out through his nostrils. He snaps into position, ready to start the process of stopping the bleeding from deep within, and then he slides in through the nostril. Then slithers along the inside of the nose, inch by inch. Brutal heat slammed down on him, and water splashed hard against his skin. The slime creature keeps right on his tail, then suddenly leaps and lands straight on his head. He shoves it back and barks a warning about the danger, then storms forward anyway, while the slime clings to him like it won't let go. A blinding flash erupts ahead, lighting up everything in its path. He leans in and spots those glowing stones blazing in the dragon's throat. He remembers Olex's warning, "Don't touch them," and steels himself to stay as far away from the pharyngeal wall as possible. He's about to dart into the esophagus's entrance, and the closer he gets, the brighter the glow burns and the heat spikes fast. The slime slaps the stones with water, and the sudden steam blasts them through the entrance. One mommy feels the sting and instantly knows this isn't just dangerous going in, it's dangerous on the way back too. After they slip past the glowing stones, a blanket of total darkness swallows them. Amami, freaked out by his penlight's dying battery, snaps it on and starts sweeping the cavity with quick, nervous scans. He stares at all those ulcer scars and thinks the queen must have swallowed something nasty while she was in dragon form. Heat damage like the takoyaki ulcers folks talk about, where super hot, sticky food sticks around too long and scorches the esophagus. Right up ahead, Amami spots the stomach, and the swelling at the esophagogastric junction screams reflux esophagitis, so bad in human terms he sizes it up like a severe grade. he remembers how this happens. Stomach acid and gastric juice splash back into the esophagus, which has almost no protection, and that bite leaves the lining raw, sore, and even ulcerated. As Amami pushes forward, he can't stop wondering, does reflux esophagitis really explain the queen's brutal hemorrhaging? He fires through the revised Lowe's Angels grades in his head. Grade N, Grade M with color change but no mucosal breaks. Grade A with tiny breaks no bigger than 5 on one fold. Grade B with a break over 5 and that doesn't link across folds. Grade C with a continuous break spanning at least 2 folds but not going all the way around. And Grade D when the breaks chew up 75% or more of the circumference. To make sense of the chaos he's seeing, he tries to connect the dots. Then a fresh vibration slams his attention. Peristalsis is firing up right now, squeezing and relaxing in perfect rhythm as it shoves everything forward toward your mouth. As the esophagus tightens hulked in, Amami reeled back and remembered Alex's warning. Dragons' stomachs chew through anything in an instant. If she landed in those gastric juices, it was instant death. As he pushes deeper, the organ's brutal contractions and corrosive guts bear down on him like a closing trap. Chapter 8 begins. Outside, the rope suddenly unravels rapidly. Alex spots the shift in an instant and knows something's gone wrong, yanking the rope tight in a panic, praying everything's okay. Inside the queen's body, Amami drops like a cannonball through her stomach and catches a glimpse of the slime that's been split off from him. He shoots his hand out in midair, reaching for it with everything he's got. The slime snaps back to consciousness and jerks a hand out, reaching for something. They slammed the brakes hard and managed to stop their descent just before they splashed into the stomach acid. They both exhale for a split second, then the slime's grip starts to slip. And the mommy keeps tumbling straight down toward the acid below. A searing torrent surges up toward him, and the moment he understands, he knows dropping into it means death, so he fights for control in midair. He targets that little strip of dry land just up ahead. The slime snaps at him again and they barely claw their way to solid ground. Amami lurches forward, teetering like he'll tip over any second. And he stares in horror as his clothes start sizzling from stray acid drops. He shoots up to his feet right away, rattled but still alive, and a wave of gratitude hits him. Thank God he slipped into the queen's body in his normal clothes, light enough to move freely, because if they'd been heavier or stiff, he would have been finished. He checks the slime totally unharmed, and another rush of relief hits him hard. The slime flails its arms wide and pinches his cheeks with pure affection, and the mom makes it official. She decides just slime isn't good enough anymore. Remembering how Queen Lintfirm had called it the Elder, he smashes the title tool down to size. The slime bounces with joy at the name, and Amami bursts into laughter. Then they lock eyes and share a quiet, wordless understanding before pushing deeper and deeper into the twisting shadows ahead. Above them, the rope's end hangs there, dangling right over the boiling stomach acid. On the far side, Alec grips the rope like it's life itself, jaw clenched, and the moment it slips, it starts pulling again. And his anxiety keeps cranking higher and higher. He's left staring at uncertainty, wondering how much longer he'll have to wait. While Amami, now with Elle at his side, tugs the rope deeper into the intestines, replaying how endoscopies work. Air gets pumped into the stomach to stretch every fold for clear sight, but when it's not pulled back out, it can spiral into nasty side effects: bloating, sharp abdominal pain, falling blood pressure, even bradycardia. That's why newer procedures switch to carbon dioxide instead, since the body absorbs it better and it usually doesn't bloat you up as badly. Amami scans his surroundings, clocking the queen's digestive condition when he steps down and feels a nasty squish under his foot, then looks up to see bleeding tissue, and in that sickening moment he realizes it might be the very cause of the queen's internal trouble. The fluid won't melt him, it's not acidic, but it's slick as hell, so he tiptoes around it, going extra careful. Out of nowhere, something explodes straight out of the intestinal wall. Moments before impact, a deadly spray of scorching liquid erupts, and a mom yanks herself out of the way at the last second. The stuff hits the ground and sizzles. He freezes, then realizes it's blood. Fresh blood, hot and bright like it can't be far off, so he follows the trail, tilts his gaze up, and then spots a lump of something bulged out from the wall like it didn't belong there. It's a tumor. One look and he knows it's a Yamada type 4 polyp, and that classification only cares about how the lesion bulges into the stomach's lumen from the outside. But this one has a smooth, regular surface with a messy, uneven texture, and that means it's way worse. A deadly malignant tumor, pure cancer spreading like a nightmare. High above the chaos, Queen Lentfirm stands unshaken, even as turmoil churns inside her, while Alec watches, bracing in panic. His gaze locked onto her colossal dragon form, trembling faintly out in the distance. Deep in the forest shadows, Cranelson snaps a curse under his breath at they. Rough, secluded terrain stretches ahead, and with no real roads, every step feels brutal, but that same wild wilderness hides every move. He's seething that he even has to cower in a place like this, and just stops midstream, staring him down, demanding to know why their purification and regeneration magic, and even the sacred world tree leaves, did absolutely nothing. Cranelson huffs out a heavy breath and admits, yeah, it barely matters anymore, but he's gonna explain it anyway, especially when it comes to the blood spewing. If someone's handed the worst fate imaginable, there's no cure, no escape, no undoing it, because that monster was dealt that brutal hand from the start. Seiya's mind drifts to that same crest, and he remembers how he pulled off that miraculous healing like it was pure magic. Cranelson keeps talking, insisting that a crest can usually snap the illness right in its tracks. Don't call Ekres a standard yardstick for what's possible, this one's straight up not normal. Under normal skies, once you hit that worst fate, there's no coming back. Seiya shoots it down without a word. If a crest can do the impossible, then there has to be another way, something close enough to grab. Before they can even finish, heavy footsteps slam through the woods and cut their conversation clean in half. Just snaps her gaze ahead and spots something moving far off, then a pack of black wolves bursts from the forest shadows and comes charging straight at them. Meanwhile, inside Queen Lintfirm's own body, Amami stares at the monstrous tumor bloating along the intestinal wall, huge enough to knock his breath out, yet he reminds himself not to judge it by human standards. He's staring at that massive tumor and knows this thing is probably ripping the queen's body apart, causing all that heavy blood loss and the anemia that's crushing her strength. The good news? The tumor's stem looks solid, like it's built to be handled. So he makes the call, it has to come out. And in his head, medical lessons start firing like flashcards, because a tumor is just an abnormal bunch of cells growing out of control, invading nearby organs or spreading somewhere else, and that's how cancer is defined. In Japanese, cancer is called gon, written in kanji or hiragana. They look close on paper, but the meaning isn't the same. The kanji points to cancers starting in epithelial cells exposed to the outside world, stomach, colon, lungs, skin. The hiragana version is wider, covering all malignancies including sarcomas from inside tissues like bone, muscle, and connective tissue, plus blood cancers like leukemia and even tumors in the brain. Under normal circumstances, Amami would strangle the tumor at its base with a detachable snare or a clipping tool to choke off blood flow. Then tear it out with the snare or an electrocautery scalpel, ruthlessly sealing every bleed as he goes, but tonight he has neither tool, and even if he did, they're nowhere near big enough for something this massive. Since a detachable snare made for stemmed polyps tightens a plastic loop to cut circulation before removal, and here the tumor is so enormous that the usual gear and tricks simply won't work. She decides that if he's going to bind and ligate the tumor, they're going to do it with the rope, and good news, it's strong enough to take the scorching heat from the stones nearby. The real panic is whether he can tie it tight enough all by himself to shut off the blood flow completely, because if he fails to make a proper ligature, the bleeding won't stop. But his gear is a mess. He brought a sword that can't flip between cutting and cauterizing like an electric scalpel, and he'd only packed it thinking he'd need a big blade to deal with a foreign object causing the bleeding. If it turned out to be a gastric ulcer, sure, he could burn it shut with the flaming edge, but now the real gamble hits. Can that same hot tool safely slice out a tumor? An electric scalpel cranks its power up or down so the surgeon can switch like a switch, slice or seal, cutting in incision mode by blasting tissues with a heavy electric current that rapidly heats them until vapor pops inside keeps the blade moving. And then flipping to coagulation mode by boosting the voltage to throw powerful discharges that scorch the tissue surface and cauterize blood vessels to stop the bleeding. Amami's thoughts turn pitch black, because if he can't control the bleeding, Queen Lintfirm might not make it through the operation, not with her already anemic body, and if her stomach starts flooding with blood, he won't walk out alive either. He clenches his teeth so hard it practically growls. He had to act because if he did nothing, her condition would spiral out of control, so even if he backed off and came back later, there was zero promise he'd find the right tools or even make it back to this exact spot. As stomach cancer digs deeper, the tumor breaks open and bleeds, dragging the body into deadly anemia through pure blood loss, while the swelling clogs the stomach so food can't pass and malnutrition spirals fast. Then it spreads again, invading nearby tissue and racing to the liver and lungs, shredding the whole body before there's even a moment to breathe. Mommy's eyes blaze with pure resolve. He starts wrapping the rope around the tumor's root, yanks it tight, and locks it down with a clean square knot. He knows that not two ties cinched in opposite directions, because it's the safest surgical ligation choice, the kind that grips tight and won't let go. Sure, there are other knots like the granny knot, surgeon's knot, or the triple knot, but when it comes to stopping bleeding, the square knot is still the go-to standard. Mommy strained hard. He yanked the rope with every ounce of strength in him. No matter how hard he tries, fresh blood starts spilling again. He yanks harder, driving those fibers deep into the tumor's root until the flesh flips from red to a bruised purple right under the squeeze. Just a touch more pressure and his hands start shaking from pure strain. El sensed his struggle, then shot out one of its conjured hands and yanked the rope to haul him up. Together they heave with every last ounce of strength, then the ligature bites and it holds. Blood flow stops dead in its tracks. This is the make or break moment, so Amami yanks his flaming sword free and he puts the blade to the test. Yeah, it won't cut like an electric scalpel, but it gets the job done. With steady, deadly focus, Amami starts cutting. Only this tumor's tissue is softer than anyone expected, so every slice drags out slow. Stroke by careful stroke, he grinds forward, carving through the searing blade's heat as the sword seal shuts the wound behind him. Outside, Alec paces like a caged animal, his rage bubbling over as he stomps his foot hard into the ground. Rage and fear collide in him as he fights the crushing sting of helplessness. Corona darts in to steady him, telling him to breathe easy and swearing right through pure faith that her master will rescue his mother. Alec glares at her, barking for an answer behind her confidence, and warns her that if the human slips up, the fallout will hit her too. Corona plants her feet and snaps, "My trust isn't blind, my master once saved my life." But Alec won't buy it and presses her anyway, wondering if she ever got hit by that blood-spewing sickness too. She shakes it off and Alec's doubt only gets sharper, turning her words into feelings with no proof. Queen Melina cuts in with a calm voice, reminding Alec that Amami didn't just help him. She saved Yuno too, a total stranger, and did it without a second's hesitation. Because Olex's mother once meant everything to him, Queen Melina, his old friend, crosses every border and ignores the politics just to tell her how much she truly hopes she'll recover. Olex tries to push his disbelief back, but her compassion hits him so hard his chest still twists with turmoil. Queen Melina calmly meets his rage and fear head-on, telling him that when it's this bad, all you've got left is faith and patience, and she reminds him his mother isn't alone because everyone is fighting right beside her. Tension in the air thickens like a storm about to break. Suddenly, Queen Lindworm's gigantic body jerks and convulses like something inside her is violently breaking free. And then boom, a torrent of blood erupts from her mouth, splattering the ground beneath her, while the whole world goes dead silent and dread grabs every single one of them. Chapter 9 begins. Inside Queen Lindworm's body, Amami completes his work and severs the tumor. The mass quivers one last time, then rips free completely. As the tumor drops, the root underneath starts to tremble like it's alive. A brutal burst of blood suddenly explodes out in a violent spray. Arterial blood gushes like a broken dam, soaking Amami as he huddles behind his shield, trying to survive the flood. Acidic stomach fluids churn below, threatening to swallow him whole. He gets hurled through the intestines like a ragdoll, slammed again and again as waves of blood and digestive fluids batter him. Outside, Queen Lindworm's body jerks and convulses, and Corona and the others just barely dodge as the queen's mouth gushes blood. The queen crumples to the ground, and instant panic erupts in everyone watching. Blood pools in the dust as Corona finally realizes that the sweet mommy is still locked away, trapped inside and unable to escape. Alec peers at the barrier and realizes the stomach acid barely touched the stone, mostly its blood, and the chill creeping up his skin sends him into panic. He springs into the air and transforms. When he feels it, his mom's body temperature is crashing, dropping fast, and if it doesn't stop, she's going to die. With determination burning bright, he refused to stand still. Alec lunges toward his mother's throat and unleashes a blazing stream of fire into it. A jolt hits the other dragonfolk, and the shock ripples through them like lightning. White-haired and black-haired dragon men barreled toward him, shouting, "Stop!" Their warning screaming that this is not what his mother ever would have wanted. Queen Melina tells us dragons pull mana straight from the air through those backward scales around their necks, then burn it to keep themselves alive, until the moment they get too weak and stop being able to draw it in on their own. Alec's shot at breathing fire is pure desperation, because a fire dragon's mana might revive his mother's strength, but the cost is brutal. He pours his mana into her, drains himself dry with no way to refill, and if he loses too much, he'll die just like someone bleeding out. Even when everyone begs him to stop, Alec digs in and won't back down. His breathing turns ragged as the strain gnaws through every last ounce of strength he has. Dragonfolk rush in, begging him to stop, because if he keeps going, they're terrified he'll die too. Yet Alec keeps going, choked by helpless devotion. His mother's body lies motionless in front of him and he's drowning in pure powerlessness. Still, he won't quit no matter what. If that mommy fire is still alive in her, then he'll believe in himself. After his mommy's gone, Alec refuses to stop. He'll keep fighting until he drops at last, while Corona quietly prays for her mommy's success. Inside Queen Lintfirm, Amami claws her way through the chaos and somehow makes it out alive. El clung to the ceiling of his stomach, refusing to let go. I stepped in and shielded him once again. His slick, mucus-coated body guarded him like a living shield, even against stomach acid that could burn through anything. Still, that protection won't last. Amami scans the chaos and realizes the rope linking him to the outside is gone, likely yanked away by the raging current of blood. He grits his teeth and forces his eyes onto the one thing that matters, the tumor's severed stem. El starts moving again and Amami realizes that the weakened stomach acid might have just saved his life, because without that bleeding, he may never have gotten thrown to safety. Storming right into the tumor's base, he watches the wound keep bleeding, just slower now, and realizes Queen Lintfirm's blood pressure is dropping, her body is slipping into shock. Shock is a terrifying, life-threatening crisis that hits when blood pressure suddenly drops and starves the organs and tissues of blood flow, and it splits into 4 big types: hypovolemic, cardiogenic, distributive, and extracardiac obstructive shock. Then inside hypovolemic shock, hemorrhagic shock kicks in when you've lost at least 20% of your total blood volume. And since blood makes up about 8% of body weight, a 60-kilogram person would reach hemorrhagic shock after losing roughly 1 liter of blood. Amami snaps into action. This is his best shot to stop the bleeding right now before the blood pressure rises. He has to stop the bleeding right now, thermocoagulation on that exposed vessel, so he scans the area like his life depends on it. He snaps his sword into place, grabs it in one clean motion, and then starts the whole procedure. He works with razor focus, hitting multiple spots on the tumor one after another while. He drove the needle just enough to stop the damage, then sealed the exact spot where the blood was pouring out. Once he spots the point of origin, he slams the blade straight into it, and even as Queen Lintfirm's blood pressure plummets with El's help, the crushing force still slams back hard enough to nearly knock him off his feet. Outside, Queen Lintfirm jolts back to life and thrashes in raw agony. Corona and the dragonfolk snap into panic, staring in total alarm. As Alec keeps going, he pours his mana into the transfer without even pausing. The Queen's power drains away, and Olex's mind crashes with every memory of his mother's last words. Her strength crumbles fast. She squeezes out one more brutal surge of blood, then crumples to the ground, knocked out cold again. The black-haired dragon man snaps a warning. Alec's mana is nearly drained and his power is seconds away from total collapse. Corona shuts her eyes tight and prays like her whole world depends on it. Deep inside the Queen's body, Amami yanks the sword free, and when he looks down, the bleeding has already stopped. He explains that endoscopic hemostasis has a whole toolbox to crush internal bleeding. Most often mechanical hemostasis and thermocoagulation, like rope ligation and his flaming blade, where mechanical techniques pinch the bleeding vessels or mucous tissue shut with clips. While thermocoagulation blasts high-frequency electricity or argon plasma to burn just the right spot until the tissue coagulates and the bleeding stops. But one wrong move, too much force or too deep, can punch a hole through the stomach wall, causing gastric perforation, so every step has to be precise. The bleeding finally dies down, treatment's done. El crashes down from the stomach ceiling and Amami scoops him up fast. That tiny monster has nothing left, collapsing hard from pure exhaustion. Amami slides him carefully into his bag, and you can tell he's genuinely grateful. He spots that his penlight got recovered too, and for one brief second that tiny wind cuts through all the chaos. All around him, the Queen's stomach is drenched in blood, the air burns with heat, and smoke from the cauterization crawls through the room. He coughs hard, metallic stink flooding his lungs, and with the rope gone, getting back outside feels like an unbeatable nightmare while his mind scrambles for answers. The ground starts shaking again and blood surges up around him. Then, in that instant, a memory explodes inside his mind. Okusawa leans in and asks Amami if he's been heading home like clockwork, and Amami groans back that of course he has. Then Okusawa presses, "Are you sleeping enough?" Amami says he's been sleeping nonstop, but Okusawa just stares because his eyes don't look open so much as drained and buried under exhaustion. And then, after a long Okusawa cautiously asks Amami why he's been driving himself so hard it's basically self-destruction, and the question knocks the life out of Amami, freezing him into stunned silence. Inside Queen Lindworm's body, something shifts and surges, then she snaps awake and blasts it out of her mouth with terrifying force. The tumor, finally ripped free, slams into the ground right as the crowd chokes on shocked horror and pure confusion, and one of the dragon men snaps, "What is that?" Alec collapses. His dragon form crumbled into sparks as he snapped back into his human shape. Panic surged through the dragonfolk as they burst toward him, screaming his name at the top of their lungs. Alec lingers on his knees, staring up at his mother's towering presence. Queen Lindworm's breathing evens out, and the strain finally melts from her body. Alec trembles in terror, begging for any sign that life is still there. Corona charges straight at Queen Lindworm. Queen Melina and Princess Yuno start to panic the moment they realize their master still hasn't shown up, and dread creeps in as silence swallows the whole field. Then bam, a hand erupts from the queen's mouth and yanks her lips wide open, and the mommy crawls out, soaked, drained, but somehow still alive. He gasps, then shouts for Corona as he fights to climb free. Relief hits hard. Corona's eyes flood with tears as she lunges forward and hugs him tight, and Princess Yuno rushes in to join them. Alec, still on his knees, locks eyes with his mother, confused, terrified, and demanding answers, while the strange mass she tossed out lies right beside him. Amami steps in and snaps the truth into place. The thing Queen Lindworm expelled was the tumor that's been destroying her, the very source of her suffering, and it came out with him. Now that the blockage is gone and the bleeding has finally stopped, she'll recover. Alex's face loosens and that fear that was choking him turns into gratitude. Queen Lindworm, barely holding on but still awake, whispers for her son, her voice trembling with warmth instead of cold. Right then, Amami snaps back to what he told Okusawa earlier, why he pushes himself so damn hard. His own words hit him like a memory with answers. Because he swears his heart is at its happiest when everyone's healthy, a tired little smile finally ghosts onto his face. Then, standing in front of the recovering Dragon Queen, Amami snaps, "Operation complete," as upper gastrointestinal bleeding is stopped and the gastric tumor is fully removed. Chapter 10 begins with the elves and all other races gathered together in celebration. Queen Melina and Princess Yuno face the roaring crowd, then Melina thrusts Yuno forward and orders her to go fetch Amami. Meanwhile, Amam is keeping a close eye on Alec, who stays trapped in his dragon form, refusing to break out. Alec fires off a brutal breath of fire at the marked target while Amami watches, wide-eyed. He kept pushing through the brutal heat, hunting for what he needed, while Amami scanned the scene and swore the temperature had finally hit the right mark. Those flames had to have wiped out every last bacteria he was worried about. But the scalpel they're using is fried too, heat like that ruins everything, and Amami is still staring at it, reflecting. He can't stop thinking about the science behind sterilization. Complete microbial destruction means wiping out every last chance of survival, so they're gone for good with fewer than 1 in a million making it through. And yeah, he links it to the usual cousins. Disinfection and antibacterial, which tame lesser threats. Disinfection just cuts down the number of germs, while antibacterial doesn't always kill them, it mainly slows or suppresses their growth. Even as she tries to explain the difference, Corona admits she can't truly wrap her head around microbes, viruses, or bacteria, while Alec pushes back hard, wondering how something so invisible can even be real if you can't see it. Amami keeps it to himself. Even if this world isn't his, he's sure those people are here too, but curiosity still claws at him, so he steals his mind and sets out to prove it. He shoots Alec a huge thank you for helping him out. But Alec refuses to let it go. He's adamant it should be the other way because when he looks at his own moves, they feel clumsy beside Amami's. Alec's mommy tells him, "If your hand starts hurting, stop everything and alert me right away so I can check it again." Alec blurts out his thanks. Then Amami jumps when Princess Yuno storms in, greets him warmly, and hands over his repaired clothes, telling him she fixed every piece she could. He blurts out, mortified and thankful, stunned she might have fixed it herself. Then Yuno cuts off his apology. She's saying the grand celebration is already underway, thrown to cheer Queen Lintworm's recovery and finally seal the long-awaited truce between dragons and elves, and she's adamant. Amami has to be there, no questions asked. Alec and Corona push him to go, reminding him he's done enough for today, and after a stubborn fight, Amami finally gives in and agrees to join. From far away, Amami and Corona stare at the castle where the celebrations are exploding with energy. Music blasts through the air, and wave after wave of people from every race swirl together in one massive crowd. They dance together, then traded bites and sips like it was the best moment of their lives. Amami gets slammed by the sheer scale of the sight, and he just stands there in awe, because the whole place feels like one wild, exuberant festival where so many different beings are packed together, laughing and celebrating like they belong. Princess Yuno stands before the world tree, grinning like her heart just lit up. It's alive again, and all kinds of people are gathered beneath its branches, cheering and celebrating together, filling her with pure, overwhelming joy. Queen Lintworm voices the exact same message with pure conviction. Her voice stayed calm, but warmth poured out like sunlight. Then Amami stepped forward, greeted the queen, and right as Alex spotted her, he called out to his mother, brimming with relief and love. Amami quickly checked on Queen Lindworm, her face tight with worry, and the queen reassured Alec that she was feeling way better now. Thanks to everyone's hard work, and especially his. Amami leans in and studies her eye, and when she spots that reddish tint along the rim has faded, it clicks. Her anemia is finally on the mend. Alec can't sit still as he blurts out how much longer she'll have to suffer before she's fully okay. The mommy falters, flat out admitting she can't say for sure, and that uncertain answer shocks both Alec and the queen. He tells you the treatment did its job, but then he drops two reasons he still can't predict what comes next. The crazy part is, the healing journey can look wildly different for humans than it does for dragons. He points at the chimera like proof, its wound sealed up in a blink compared to any human, and now Queen Lintworm's anemia looks like she's bouncing back at a wild pace, which means her recovery just might follow the same path. Corona adds that the forest bounced back fast after what hit it, and she's right there with Amami's assessment. Then Mom drops the second reason, whatever tumor Queen Lindworm forced out might be malignant. He labels it cancer, a deadly growth that eats away at the body, or maybe something harmless, but without the right tools he can't tell which one it really is, so he won't dare guess how long her recovery will take. With a guilty shake of his head, he tells the queen he wishes he had a straight answer, but right now he can't. Queen Lintworm lets out a soft laugh at his apology like it's the sweetest thing ever, and tells him he's done nothing wrong. She may not catch every technical detail, but she understands the heart of it. It all comes down to luck, good or bad. She blurts out that she feels way better already, and sitting around doing nothing is totally not her style. Then she asks if there's anything she can do herself to speed up her recovery. Amami tells her to get regular checkups and take her health seriously, explaining that these checks keep the treated spots strong, stopping nasty complications before they can even start. Corona, all confused, mishears it and blurts out about wriggly checkups, until his mommy clears it up and reminds him he meant regular checkups. Alec and Queen Lintworm stare in shock as it clicks. Amami plans to dive back into her giant dragon body again and again to study it firsthand, and Queen Lintworm can't believe a human would actually sign up for that torture, calling the inside of a dragon an inferno for someone like him. She apologizes again, insisting this is the only way he can truly keep eyes on her recovery, and admitting he hates that he's adding even more pain. Queen erupts into wild, unstoppable laughter. She calls his apology magnanimous and cheers his nerve, and to her he's this strange, standout kind of man, quirky, sure, but impossible not to admire. She throws her full trust on him, handing over her entire safety like it's in the safest hands in the world. Because the checkups are going to keep coming like clockwork, she says their relationship is set to last, and then she loosens up, asking him to call her Lin. Amami smiles and thanks her, using that new name right away. Princess Yano and the others just watch, grinning, because the queen's voice suddenly turns bright and playful. Then a deep voice cuts in, saying it's almost unheard of for a dragon to show a human that kind of affection. Princess Yuno swings around and welcomes the stranger, Master Normam, then Normam shoots her a sly look as he greets her. He throws jabs at Queen Lintworm, hinting she's secretly plotting with one of her old enemies. she snorts back that those accusations are rich, especially coming from him. She tells him straight up, "I still owe a massive debt to your mommy, and if anything happens to you, I won't let it slide." Then she leans in and warns him, calling him the former king of the dwarves to remember it. Normem fires back that old tales from a legendary berserk dragon like her. Honestly, that part tracks. Even so, he can't ignore this. If one single thing had slipped, the world tree would have been wiped out for good. Alex still baffled by their banter as the two keep trading shots, and then he turns to Amami. Normem shoves a huge flagon of beer into his hands like it's a victory toast. He keeps pushing Amami to take it, bragging it's the strongest brew in all the land, and when Queen Lintworm snaps at him, he just bursts into laughter, saying he's only handing the guy a drink, thinking that refusing here in this festive mood could look downright rude. Mommy takes a sip and hands it over, and the flavor hits him as simple at first, then reveals this deeper, twisted edge. It doesn't feel that strong to him, but he can't help wondering if this is really their most potent booze. Normem flashes him a huge grin, and Mommy grins right back, thinking it's been way too long since he's had a drink like this. A little kid suddenly yells, "Master Normem," and there's Nino sprinting up with shaky breath. Normem rushes to apologize, asking if he forced Nino to go looking for him. Nino blurts it out, then whips her head around, staring at the whole crowd in stunned disbelief. Normem bows deeply to Princess Yano and she waves it off, "Don't sweat it," but Nino snaps back that he has to take this seriously, so Normem just grins, laughing and teasing the boy. While a mom watches the exchange, smiling at the way that sweet, sudden light-hearted moment breaks through the middle of the big celebration. Rain battered the forest floor as Krenelson spat curses under his breath. The whole scene turns grim, wolves, dragons, and elves all closing in at once, while the danger tightens around them like a noose. She dropped to her knees and begged Krenelson to use his regeneration magic. He pressed his hand to his own face and flinched through the pain, then realized she was bleeding too and swore he'd heal her. Then hesitated. He confessed he could heal her, but the thought of being turned useless afterward terrified him because his purification magic was rare, precious, and not something he could just lose. With all that unknown looming ahead, they'd better save every last bit of what they've got. Just seethed in silence, but Krenelson snapped that she wasn't bleeding at all and ripped into her for overdoing it. The wolf pack appeared in the blink of an eye, right on their trail. The raging wolf lunged forward and slammed Krenelson right to the ground. He left Jo behind, but she screamed after him as he vanished. At the festival, the women lit up and waved at Princess Yano as she slipped away to go join them. Norman dropped the cue for a dance, and the women rose up, ready to move. Yuno started stomping her feet, and everyone else copied her instantly. And every time they stomped, rings of light erupted and glowed beneath their feet. The rings started blooming glowing mushrooms along the world tree, dozens of bright fungi bursting to life the moment the elves' magic hit. Normem told him that without the elves' power, the world tree would stay buried in darkness, and that their light had guided countless souls when they were totally lost. Amami clocked Normem's eye patch and Nino's capped arm as Normem talked about the place the elves had built. A home that welcomed everyone with zero judgment, and the world tree's pain-melting leaves, plus 2 priceless treasures that made the whole land untouchable. Normem snapped that even the strongest cure is useless if it can't reach the people who need it, and he laughed at the idea of trusting humans like that. At the same time, he couldn't shake the thought that if healing magic had been everywhere, their future might have turned out wildly different. He couldn't help but wonder if a mom would finally step in and prove useful again. That mommy told him straight up, this medicine wasn't what he thought at all, and it hit him hard because he was only just starting to realize what it truly meant. The party got wrecked by a shrieking alarm, then a messenger burst in, warning that a pack of black wolves was coming fast. The messenger burst in and swore that some humans, the healing mages who'd fled earlier, were ambushed by black wolves in the forest, and they somehow dragged those monsters straight toward the festival. The crowd erupted in shock and outrage. Alex snapped with rage, swore he'd get retribution, and ordered the dragons to mobilize, while Princess Yuno promised she'd throw everything she had into helping. Even a mommy, stunned by the talk of violence, could feel the furious determination blazing around him. Chapter 11, the pack of black wolves attacked, leaping against the fortress walls, but the guards intercepted them and the two just kept climbing, endless waves of black fur and snapping teeth smashing against the defenses. The black-haired elf fought like their life depended on it, while the white-haired elf barked orders to get reinforcements rushed to the cave. Explosions tore through the area, blasting the wolves into a panic and rattling the very ground beneath them. Amid the roaring chaos, Krenelson, coughing blood and bleeding out, snapped for someone to drag him inside. Then he revealed the truth: he was an ordained priest. Before Alec and the rest could even breathe, a mommy swooped in and rounded everyone up for an urgent talk. Time was running out and he pushed to stop any more injuries or deaths before it was too late. Princess Yano and Alec kept their eyes locked on him. Queen Melina handed her daughter a weapon and barked a warning to keep her guard up. And the princess swore she'd come back safe. Then the dragon men surged back to action under Olex's command. Resentment roared in his chest because to him the humans' smug arrogance, their belief that they were born naturally superior, was what sparked this whole disaster. He faced Amami head-on and dropped the cruel truth: those stripes of pride only ever spawn pain and death. Amami, who finally understood why he was so furious. He couldn't walk away from the pain in front of him. Relic remembered those exact words his mom once said, like it didn't matter if you were human or something stranger at all. That memory snapped him back to his mother's chamber. She lay there, coughing up misery, while the air itself felt heavy with sickness. When he chased down the healing mages, Queen Lindworm snapped that they'd vanished through the window, leaving their duty behind. The shock nailed Alec to the spot, helpless and seething with fury. Seeing Yudo shake, Queen Lindworm leaned in and told him to follow whatever his heart said was right. She spun to Alec and gave him the same push: think hard about what you believe, then stand your ground and back it. Chimera's massive wings thrashed into motion, yanking Amami and the others up into the sky. Alec shouted after them and Queen Lindworm watched, reading every ounce of his turmoil. Then she barked orders for the other dragonfolk to tail Princess Yano and keep her safe. Alec clenched his fists, determination hardening like steel, and he blasted into a dragon form and launched into the sky. Panic swept through the city, and as the wolves flooded in, the citizens scattered and bolted like prey. Hike fought tooth and nail, landing a hit but taking brutal gashes of his own in return. He was getting crushed by sheer numbers. Captain Minel refused to fall back, shouting for his men to hold the line until reinforcements crashed in, relief spreading across the battlefield. Princess Yano and her crew burst onto the scene, smashing through the pack with fresh, unstoppable force. The thunderous impact hit right after. Alex slammed into the heart of the wolves. Chimera dropped down beside him. Captain Minel clocked him the second he showed up. Heath and Hike dropped to their knees in pure shock, shouting that he was the forest god. Alec and the Chimera roared like thunder, their combined power driving the wolves wild and scattering them deep into the wilderness. As the dust finally cleared, Phylon rushed to check Captain Minel, bruised but still standing strong, while Hike's arm was split wide open with a deep slash. Mommy dropped to her knees to get a closer look at the wound, and right then she started to notice. Filth clung to the claws of wild beasts and it screamed one brutal warning: leave it untreated and infection would take over. He pushed the idea: bring Hyde straight to the castle so they could give him real, proper care. He hesitated for a beat, not sure where else he could go, then Hike nodded, understanding flashing in his eyes, and geared up to head to the castle while the others regrouped in the eerie quiet after the fight. Captain Minel snapped that Heath should go with him to stay safe, and Heath obeyed on the spot. Amami scanned everyone for injuries and Princess Yuno assured her that, for now, everyone else was standing strong. Relief hit her so hard she could barely breathe, grateful the fight had somehow ended without major losses. Yet Alec, all tense and grim, knew the nightmare wasn't done. He planted his feet and stomped toward a nearby tree as Krenelson. He perched above them all and jeered at the wolves as they fled. The whole mood snapped the moment Alec loomed behind him. Then, in a single ruthless move, Alec grabbed Krenelson and yanked him straight down. Burned in Olex's voice as he replayed the warning he gave a mom: tell them or someone else gets hurt, and now he was done waiting, ready to handle it himself. He tightened his grip, and Krenelson started panicking the second the pressure cranked up. Mommy begged him to stop, right there, right now. Alec hesitated for a split second, but he didn't let go. Krenelson, shaken to the core, threw himself at the plea for help, begging like there was still a shred of kindness in her. Alec's rower's voice swallowed the room, and Krenelson snapped into terrified screams. When Alec demanded answers about where the other person had vanished to, Krenelson went stone cold. Then Captain Minel cut in, saying he was the only one they'd managed to find. Alec blasted him for leaving his companion to die among the wolves, calling it cold, classic human cruelty, and then warned that if Krenelson wouldn't or couldn't lead them to her, things would turn deadly. He'd drop him right where he stood. Panic slammed into Krenelson's mind, his thoughts sprinting everywhere at once, so he chose to lie, stall her, and bolt later. He jabbed at a random direction and swore she was standing right there. Alec didn't even pause, he bolted into the sky, and the chimera tore after him as a mother scrambled onto its back, screaming that they had to catch up with him. Right after Alec ended the last victim, no one else would get a chance to fall. Captain Mintle snapped into action, obeying Princess Yuno's command, and joined the crew as the chimera sword tore through the sky. They crashed deep into the forest, and the air turned thick with the stench of ash. The ground was scorched and still smoldering, the wreck of a fire crawling through the clearing. Captain Mintle instantly knew it, the wolves' den, their cubs' nursery. His voice drifted through the air, faint but close enough to catch my attention. Alec spun toward the noise and froze. Surviving wolves were grieving in a ring, howling over scorched bodies, while she huddled in the bushes as the pack clawed the dirt right around her. Alex locked eyes on her, grabbed her by the arm, and yanked her into the open. Blood covered her body, her breaths came thin and shaky, right on the edge of death. Frantic Mom bolted to her side. He shoved himself between her and Alec, dropped to a knee, and snapped into assessment. Her radial pulse was dead, her jugular bulged like a warning sign, and panic flared in his eyes as the truth hit him. She ripped her clothes wide open, bared her chest, and then, right up to his stethoscope. He tapped the bell, then pressed it to her skin, while the forest stayed deadly still, broken only by ragged breaths and the soft crackle of embers. Krenelson gaped at Amami's moves, completely stunned, while Alec, Captain Mintle, and Corona watched with tight nerves as Amami pressed close and analyzed the sounds coming from her own lungs. Her breath came out faint and muffled on the right side, pure attention pneumothorax vibes, so he snapped into action, grabbed his medical bag, and Corona tore in to deliver it fast. Captain Mintle, seething with rage, snapped and demanded to know what Amami was doing. He accused him of ditching Hike, who'd risked her life for everyone, only to find her stuck at the castle, desperate for treatment, while some mommy shoved this bloodied stranger ahead of her. Rage flared in his voice as he demanded to know why a mommy would drop everything to help a half-dead girl just because she was human. Amami studied the patient's condition like the clock was screaming, and every second mattered. She insisted on immediate minimum treatment, no waiting, and when Captain Mintle heard that strange term, confusion struck as he grilled him. Triage, explained like a mummy revealing secrets through every action and thought, is the emergency system for when disasters hit and tons of people get hurt at once, sorting who gets help first based on how deadly and urgent each condition is, with every patient marked in a color tag. Red, yellow, or green. Red tags get handed to the most dangerously hurt people, ones who might still make it, so they get treated first. Yellow tags mean the injuries are serious enough to need care, but you can hold off treatment for a bit. Green tags, those are minor wounds that barely need any attention at all. Black tags are saved for the cases that can't be treated, or for people who are already beyond saving. Alec yanked Krenelson into restraint as Krenelson's scream tore through the air, and the tension kept ratcheting higher. Captain Mintle watched Amami as he quietly studied Krenelson's wounds, like nothing could shake him. The captain, eyeing Amami's priorities with sharp suspicion, seethed as he watched him put the human before the elf, like rank mattered more than compassion. To him, Amami looked just like every other beginner, always rushing to save the royals and the high-ranking first, then he threw himself right back into his work. When Krenelson revealed a burn on his palm, proof he'd been overusing his fire magic. Amami called it green and brushed it off as a minor injury, then turned her back and walked away, raising his blade to finish Sire. His decision left Krenelson and Captain Mintle completely speechless, then the priest erupted in loud protest. He got crushed by being pushed to the back, and when his mommy ignored him anyway, it stung even worse. Amami quickly pinpointed the second intercostal space on J's chest. Flip it in like a needle. Air hissed out as she snapped her eyes open, and Krenelson stared at her in total disbelief. Mom told us she'd been hit by a pneumothorax. Air had gotten trapped between her lung and chest wall, and when that air piled up, it choked her lung and even crushed the heart, turning it into a tension pneumothorax that could be deadly fast by slashing blood flow. His lightning-fast move steadied her, and they shoved through the seconds they needed until the castle, where she could finally get real treatment. Captain Mintle finally saw just how deep Amami's understanding ran, and it hit him like a punch in the gut. His first cold judgment of this human wobbled, and now he couldn't stop asking himself what kind of rules this man lived by and whether Hike could truly be saved. Meanwhile, Krenelson bolted for the exit, desperate to escape, only for Olex to lunge in and snatch him. Panic detonated in his chest as he screamed for help. But Amami, rock solid in his triage judgment, wouldn't bump him up the line, because his injury was the lightest. Captain Minel snapped, demanding to know what Amami planned to do with Krenelson, and Amami finally confessed he'd been hoping to drag him back and nurse him later. But the captain's glare hit like a judgment, cold, sharp, and dripping with distrust. He just couldn't wrap his head around a mother's logic. Why on earth would he risk everything to save the world, even the people who don't deserve it? Hunching his head, Amami quietly admitted that maybe, just maybe, he'd been selfish. But he just couldn't bring himself to abandon anyone who was still salvageable. Back at the castle, Cook slammed pots and kept the ovens blazing while Queen Melina sprinted to his side and cleaned his wounded arm with total care, while Princess Yuno brewed tea from world tree leaves, praying it would melt the pain away. An anxious hush hung in the air, thick with urgency, and the moment Amami arrived, she snapped into action and started calling the shots right away. He demanded the wounded be laid on the nearest bed, and he promised that her condition would stay stable and not slip any further. So long as she stayed quiet and rested, he decided to focus on treating her, at least for now. As Amami inspected the wound, he spotted that the bandage looked spotless, but the wound underneath still hadn't been properly disinfected. That cup beside it reeked of world tree leaves, and it hit him. This world wasn't trying to stop infection, they were only trying to soothe the pain, like that was just how things worked, observing Hikes for strained expression. He quietly decided the pain was way worse than the man claimed, and Amami told Corona to get the sterile water ready. He scrubbed the wound clean, injected local anesthesia, and got everything ready for the next step. Then, just to hit them with a second shock, he sliced the wound wider. Queen Melina, Princess Unigast, and Captain Minel all protested in shock, their minds refusing to accept why anyone would make a serious injury even bigger, like that Mommy was trying to worsen it on purpose. Amami's mind raced through the rules of debridement: cut out the dead, necrotic tissue, scrub the wound clean, and give healing a real shot, because he knew rotten tissue breeds infection and smothers new growth, no matter how brutal the procedure looks. The air stayed razor-tight until Princess Yuno leaned in and reminded Captain Minel. And Amami had already blown everyone away, proving his skill and showing he genuinely meant well. Corona steadied her with a proud grin, insisting, despite her clear reluctance, that her master really was something extraordinary. Captain Minel handed the entrusted Hike's care to a mother, and Corona helped him slide on his gloves. Then the mother snipped forward with plastic scissors. About the damaged tissue, his eyes shot wide open. But Amami pressed on with razor-sharp focus, chasing every wavering beat like it mattered. Once the debridement was finished, he scrubbed the spot again, slathered on Vaseline, then wrapped it up tight with fresh bandages. He reassured them that Hike's wound would finally start healing the right way. He kept watch on it non-stop until he knew the recovery was finally done. As the Hikes finally exhaled, relief hit him like a wave. Captain Minel fell into tense silence, replaying every brutal thing he'd just witnessed. The so-called magic Amami practice wasn't some ordinary trick. It was pure skill, sharp precision, and real compassion welded into one. Rank, the mommy behind the scenes, seemed dead sure it didn't matter who you ranked, only who truly deserved to be saved, and that thought hit the captain like a spark. Who couldn't help it, he broke into a faint, secret smile. Queen Melina caught it with her sharp eyes, and then she grinned like she'd just uncovered the perfect piece of the puzzle. With no time to waste, the mommy stepped to the next patient and kept going, treating them strictly by urgency. She warned that a pocket of trapped air was still sitting in the woman's chest, so she'd slide in a tube to let it out and force her lung to expand again. If that didn't work, she'd turn to pleurotses, intentionally inflaming the pleura so the lung sticks to it and can't keep collapsing. And she even recalled how, back in her world, doctors had tried antibiotics, anti-cancer drugs, or even a patient's own blood for the job. As she watched him labor, Queen Melina made her move, turning to Princess Yuno. She announced they were carving out a spot for Amami at the World Tree. A bold gesture flashed, recognition, deep gratitude, and a full-on acceptance of that foreign healer who just smashed into their world with his strange, powerful art. In a dim prison cell, Krenelson sat locked behind enchanted metal bars like the world had trapped him in a spellproof cage crafted to crush every last flicker of magic, so no spell and no brute force could ever snap it. The air felt like a pressure cooker as he fumed, blasting his outrage into the room with loud, angry shouts. His pride as an ordained priest burned like wildfire, and the humiliation of getting thrown behind bars by the dragonfolk was more than he could stand. Rage tore through him as he screamed about the injustice of it all, how his mother's fate never should have been sealed as incurable by anyone, and how none of what happened was his fault. In his eyes, this whole nightmare was an insult that could only explode into war. Outside the bars, Alex stood there without blinking, his face set in stone with cold, unshakable resolve. Around him, the dragonfolk guards stood frozen in silence, their eyes burning with anger they refused to let out, while Krenelson's insults cut through the air, sneering that they were nothing more than barbecued lizard meat. Yet Alec didn't so much as blink. He stared down the priest with pure contempt, convinced nobody on Earth would ever risk their life for someone like him, and that's why Krenelson was still breathing. Alec had decided he wasn't worth the effort to kill. With his mom's health finally climbing back up, Alec felt the moment land. Whatever came next, he was ready to throw down. Without a single warning, Alec blasted forward and smashed his fist straight into Krenelson's face. The sound crashes and booms back off the prison walls, sharp enough to sting your ears. The priest's body got launched backward and slammed into the stone with a grim, dull thud, while Oleg's eyes burned bright with that twisted fear satisfaction as he swore retribution, saying the worst hand Krenelson ever mentioned was finally headed for him, and so was the regret that would come right after. Elsewhere, she sat in peace as the world stayed quiet around her, calm breaths, unaware of the chaos simmering just beyond her chamber walls. Deep inside the human lands, a messenger dropped to his knees before Archbishop Ekres, and the great hall felt like a tomb as he delivered the news, while Ekres's priest and deacon stood ready after being sent to the World Tree. They ditched their healing duties, and just after they were snatched up and captured, those words hit like a shockwave, sending ripples through the church and the kingdoms far beyond. Queen Lintfirm slammed a knuckle on the door, and Princess Yunno and Queen Melina swung it open with warm smiles. Melina thanked her for showing up, then called it, "All right, everyone, the meeting starts now." Meanwhile, Jo was still down for the count. An emergency tube had been shoved into her chest to suck out the trapped air and fluid with thoracic drainage. Normally, this calls for a fancy 3-bottle setup. One to catch the fluid, one to block air from sneaking back in, and one to control the suction. But Amami didn't have that gear, so he made it work with just 2 bottles, letting gravity do the heavy lifting and pulling with a siphon effect instead. Not high-tech, but it got the job done. Back at the meeting, Queen Melina leaned in and demanded to know if Queen Lindworm was still ready to keep their alliance going. Lindworm gave a small, tired smile. Everything had finally cooled down, so she chose to forgive Olex, apologized for the mess, and Melina told her her recovery was humming along, and she needed to know that this was the only thing that mattered. Everything else could stay buried in the past. Then Lindworm jumped in, tossing out a brand new idea that changed everything. In their pact, the dragons vowed to guard the elves' land, but she wanted to tag on a mommy, or Yudo, to that protection too. Prime Minister Mayed shot her a sharp look. "Let's keep him here for his own safety so he doesn't start anything or get himself hurt," she said, watching every word. Lindworm snapped her head side to side. "If we start spiraling into overthinking, we'll never agree on a thing," she said, but really, if Princess Yuno hadn't dragged this mommy into the room, who knows what kind of disaster could have hit, so I'm just begging him to stay, at least for my own reasons, she admitted, flashing a small, knowing smile. Princess Yuno shot back a quick yes. She was desperate for her mommy to stay right there too. Queen Melina nodded. "So you're saved too thanks to him, huh?" "Yeah, I know," he said, firm as stone. Melina flashed a smile. "And you said, 'I agree, let's add it to the pack.' Then you insisted, 'A mommy's got to stay right here with us at the World Tree Cave.'" Prime Minister Mayed grabbed a pen and started jotting it down right away. But Melina cut her off. "Hold on," she snapped. "We're choosing his future without even asking him. Let's hear what the mommy himself thinks." Mayed rose, bowed, and said, "Understood, I'll summon him right away." Corona slams up to SIA for a direct check. Staying locked in, I listen to every breath she made. She feels Seiya's heartbeat thumping in her chest, and right beside it, from the right side, she hears this faint, extra sound creeping in. Mom snatches the stethoscope from her hands and leans in, listening with total focus. He confirms the breathing on the right side is clear and steady, and Corona locks onto it instantly. SIA is finally getting better. But if that sound fades again, they'll have to let out the trapped air once more and run pleurotes again to stop it from coming back. Corona grabs the stethoscope. With the instructions finally sinking in, Seiya slowly cracks her eyes open, and Amami's heart jumps when she realizes she's back from unconsciousness. Alex, still glued to his spot, finally steps in with a hard, stern look on his face, making SIA jolt back in shock. Mom leans in and tells her straight up, Alec was the one who found her and saved her. Alex's words hit him like a shock. Ja's mommy steps in fast, telling her recovery is still a slow grind, but the good news is clear, she's definitely improving. Ja, trembling but thankful, turns to Amami and blurts out her thanks, while Alec, lost in deep thought, wrestles with the beliefs he has to keep standing for. Ja shoots him a quick look and tells him straight up that she's grateful too. Alec hesitates. His eyes flickered with quiet heartbreak, like sorrow he couldn't quite hide. Amami clocks his expression and asks if he wants something, and Alex shakes his head. Nah, not really, because all he's thinking about is maybe grabbing a drink together if he ends up with some free time. Mom blurts out an apology, says she's tied up for now, and promises they'll meet later. Then Alex slips away in silence. Corona keeps staring at the stethoscope in her hands while Mom leans in, asking what's going through her head. Then Corona blurts out that she can't shake the worry. Is it really okay for her to be holding something this amazing? In his mommy's mind, the stethoscope's origin comes roaring back. Way back in ancient Greece, Hippocrates learned to listen by pressing his ear straight to a patient's chest. And that idea stayed the same for ages until 1816, when French doctor René Laennec built the first real stethoscope. A rolled paper tube that could track a heartbeat and breathing. Then later American physician George Kamen took it further with the binaural version, basically the blueprint for the modern stethoscopes we still use today. Mom assures Corona, of course it's fine, go ahead, and then dreams out loud that someday he'll get her a stethoscope of her very own. Corona snaps in shock and asks if he really plans to make just one for her. Then Amami confirms it, and Corona remembers the promise he made to her grandfather. But right now there's only one stethoscope between them, so he leans in and asks her to let him borrow it, just for the moment. Corona beams with bright joy, nodding instantly, thanking him from the heart. Then Amami smiles back too. He realizes they're so strapped for supplies right now that even stethoscopes are scarce, so they'll have to build everything back from scratch piece by piece. Right then, a voice cuts through the chaos. Is there a mommy here? Startled out of her thoughts, Amami snaps her head up as Prime Minister Mayed steps in. Then she steadies herself and introduces herself formally, serving Queen Melina, and you can tell she's genuinely thrilled to finally meet him face to face. Mom's eyes snap wide with shock and he blurts out, quick, can I borrow your glasses? Mayet's like, wait, what are you getting at? All confused, then Amami leans in, stares at his glasses, and boom, his face lights up, real working lenses. He bursts out laughing, way too thrilled, like he can already see a whole world of possibilities. Corona watches from the side and goes, so these are some kind of amazing tool? Amami nods so hard it's basically vibrating, yeah, definitely. And over in the corner, Mayed's face turns red, flustered by how excited Amami is. Realizing he'd gone way too far, Amami blurts out an apology and Mayed stammers, it's okay. As long as he gets it back, there's nothing to worry about. Next, Mayed hustles Amami into the royal meeting room, and the second they're all there, she announces she finally got him. Amami grins and says it's perfect timing because he was actually hoping to talk with them too. Princess Yuno clocks that Mayed's face is still flushed red, but she keeps her mouth shut. Queen Melina leans in and asks what Amami wants to talk about, and the mommy inhales hard before saying it's all about the injured patient. His injuries are finally healing and his lungs are getting their breath back, but he can't shake the fear of infection, those wolf claws and fangs, and worst of all, rabies. Princess Yuno stares in confusion as her mommy breaks it down. Rabies is a deadly human disease you catch from an infected animal's bite or scratch, like dogs, wolves, or bats, and once symptoms hit, it's almost always over. She points out that Japan wiped rabies out decades ago, but it can still sneak back when people return from overseas with infections. The virus usually stays quiet for 1 to 3 months, yet if the vaccine is given during that window, the person can still be saved. Queen Lindworm's brows knit tight. She straight up warns that it sounds downright dangerous. Amami nods, then admits he's not even convinced rabies exists in this world, but with so many races and creatures sharing the same spaces, he pushes for caution anyway. Mayed demands to know how he's going to pull this off. Amami tells him he's not done yet, he'll keep both wounded patients under close watch, then hit the streets to ask around for any rabies-like symptoms, even stories from old legends or folktales. He blurts out an apology for all the trouble he's caused, but Queen Melina shuts that down fast. She reassures him they trust his judgment and know what he's doing. She whips around to the group and declares, "All right, time to talk about his reward." Amami stares in total confusion, then Queen Melina breaks into a bright smile. "Of course," she says, "because he's been treating their people better than the most expensive magic healers they've ever hired. He's earned it for all the work he's done and all the work he'll do next." The mommy's eyes blow wide with shock. He flings his hands around, swearing he won't take a single payment. He's doing this to help, plain and simple, because they're already feeding him, housing him, and handing over every resource he asks for, so that's more than enough. Queen Lintworm raises a brow and starts teasing him. So is he really telling her life doesn't deserve a single reward? Wow, that's pretty harsh, isn't it? The moment the guy gets flustered, a mom quickly snaps back, "No, that's not what he meant." After a brief pause, he leans in and tells his story. Way back in his world, there was a place called Koishikawa Hospital, built by Dr. Shozen Agawa, who swore that every person, even the poor, deserved real medical care. Queen Melina's smile says it all. She totally gets him. So yeah, she's basically saying, let's build something like that here too, a real hospital where everybody, no matter who they are, gets treated. Amami nods hard, because his dream is simple. Build a place where anyone who comes to the World Tree for help can finally get real medical care. He knows that in a world where medicine is basically unheard of, this might sound like a bold, arrogant demand, but if they'll forgive him for asking, he's determined to make it happen. For one tense moment, the whole room goes dead silent. Then Queen Lindworm gives a soft, knowing laugh and says she fully expects Samami to go full greedy when saving lives is on the line. Queen Melina just smiles like she already gets it, while Prime Minister Mayed lifts her hand politely, apologizes for butting in, and asks to add one little point. Melina blurts out, "What is it?" And Mayed explains she heard Corona is Amami's apprentice, so if it's possible she wants Amami to teach his healing magic to the elves too. Amami agrees on the spot. Maya jolts with surprise, like, did she really hear that? "I get it," she starts, saying she'd understand if he wanted to keep his secrets, but then, wait, did he just say yes? Amami nods again, sealing it. He tells them his hands can't stretch to everyone in time, so the more people who learn to heal, the more lives they can snatch back. Mayed is left staring in shock. Princess Yuno shoots to her feet at once, practically begging to join the training. Queen Melina nods, promises they'll carve out a healing haven in this land, and a relieved mommy smiles, then suddenly snaps back and asks what they were supposed to talk about in the first place. Meanwhile, in the human kingdom, a bishop leans over a wounded girl and murmurs a soft chant, hovering his hand above her injury as if he can heal her in an instant. Torn flesh creeps back together, sealing shut inch by inch. The girl gasps like she just saw a miracle, tears burst out of her eyes, then she realizes her leg is totally healed. The bishop leans in and warns her that some curses don't vanish, they cling to a wound, and if she ever feels that burning heat or pain crawling back, she's got to drink the holy water he just handed her. The girl shoots him a grateful smile, shoves a few coins into his hand, and then slips away. Right there, a bystander gushes that the bishop is incredible. He healed that brutal wound like it was nothing, and Arch just shrugs it off, saying it's all faith and prayer. The man snickers and mutters that some nobody like that girl can't possibly deserve a miracle from God, not when Arch already gave her holy water blessed by Master Icres himself, but Arch snaps back with a frown. God made every human equal. He shrugs and says that doesn't count other races or half-breeds, and the men start laughing, crude, loud, and mean. Jokes fly that the holy water is probably just fruit juice from some peasant farm anyway, so maybe it fits her perfectly. Then another guy can't believe Master Icres even calls it holy water in the first place, when boom, a messenger bursts in, bows hard, and declares that Archbishop Icres has summoned Bishop Arch to the Holy See at once. Archer's face tightens into steel. Master Icres, he gives a serious nod, then says, "I understand." Inside the Holy See, Bishop Arch strides through a long, echoing hallway, then a voice barks, asking if he was summoned too. He whips around and there they are, Soul and Comet barreling toward him. Arch leans in and demands, "Have you heard what's happening?" Soul shrugs it off, nothing's landed in his ears. Comet scowls, bitter as poison, convinced this is just another flashy stunt staged for some wealthy sponsor, the same kind they were dragged into after that slave trader fiasco. He stomps ahead, seething with irritation, and Soul just watches him go, sighs, then mutters about comets at that rebellious age. Archfranz mulls it over, maybe it's not only him but Sol and even Comet called for a reason like Archbishop Ekres has dragged all 6 stars into his plans. Sol shrugs and says Mia won't show up, she always blows off summons when she's buried in her experiments. Arch blinks, experiments. Sol finally spills what she's after, treatments that don't cash in, and before anyone can blink they're already headed into the meeting room. Inside, FIA beams at them and right next to her stands Zess. Then Arch returns the greeting with a grin. Just a heartbeat later the door swings open and Archbishop Ikres steps in like a storm, shutting the room down with his presence. He sweeps his gaze over everyone, the elite 6 stars and the Holy Church's top healing priests, then he smiles and says, "Thank you all for coming." One of our holy healers, this priest, has been slacking off, pocketing his pay like nothing happened, and now they've hauled him into captivity at the World Tree. He just pauses, letting the weight of his confession crush the room. The ordained priest Krenelson. A tense whisper ripples through the group and it sharpens in his hardened gaze as he keeps moving. This is a grave crisis and we need to strike fast. Plug the leak, find the source, and make sure no single drop of our sacred healing magic escapes our control. The 6 of them lock eyes and freeze, uneasy, confused, each one staring at the same thought. Krenelson and what his capture at the World Tree could possibly mean. His mommy rubs the back of his head, eyes locked on a question like she's trying to crack it open. Corona watches him, worry etched on her face, and calls his name. Then Amami snaps back to reality and shoots back an apology. Alec barges into the room, tosses him a casual greeting, and lets slip that he heard Amami's cooking up something. Amami just nods like, "Yeah, you heard right." Then he heaps praise on Corona like she's the best thing ever, and Amami steps in to say it's her plan to build a hospital, somewhere anyone can show up for treatment of illnesses or injuries, no matter who they are. Then he shoots them a quick admission. He's running out of time and pulls out a drawing he's been grinding on, saying they'll need one like this even for the hospital. Alex stares at the sketch, clocking all the tiny details, and blurts out, "Is that a picture of your mom?" A mom steps in and explains that he's not goofing around, he's trying to craft a brand new anatomy book. In 1774, the new book of anatomy, called Kaidai Shinsho, hit the world as Japan's first big translation of Western medical science, and even though some people swear it's just a copy of Antlik Kondich Teflon, it was actually stitched together from multiple anatomy works, especially those by Thomas Bartholin, Stephen Blancart, and Caspar Bartholin, while the frontispiece is thought to be modeled after one from a book by Juan Valverde do Amusco. Amami tells everyone his book is going to do the same thing, be a file of anatomical records. After finally getting the rare chance to treat a dragon, he wants to map its inner structure so people like Corona can actually study it when the next treatment comes. And yeah, that dream is real, but the work is nowhere near finished. He even fesses up that he's missing most of the tools and materials he needs, and that leaves him stuck in a brutal, no easy way out situation. He can't forget his disastrous try at making soap, and Alec remembers it just as clearly. That night, a horrific stench rolled through the air, and a mommy rushed over to apologize, insisting he'd made some kind of mistake. Alec tore away from the odor, screaming in disgust, and Queen Melina snapped at him, demanding to know what he was doing up so late to unleash a smell like that. Amami can't stop regretting that experiment. He tried to make soap by mixing animal fat with plant ash to whip up lye, then tossing in salt, and yeah, he wasn't a pro, but those ingredients should have worked. In his head, soap is basically a tiny molecular diplomat. One end loves water, the other clings to oil. So it forces grimy gunk to loosen up and lets water and oil mix long enough to wash dirt away, and that same rinse can help wipe out bacteria and viruses. Some soaps even go further with medicinal or inverted styles that can act more like sterilizers. And yeah, soap's not some new invention, it's been around forever. It shows up in Japan during the Azuchimama era, 1568 to 1600, yet records of soap making stretch back much earlier. A Sumerian clay tablet from around 300 BC already talks about it. There's even a wild Roman legend about a place called Sappho where sheep were burned for sacrifice. When the animal fat mingled with wood ash and soaked into the ground, it formed a cleaning substance with crazy power, and the story claims that hill is the origin of the English word soap. Corona leans in, eyes wide, and blurts that she can't wait to try it. She's never used soap a day in her life, then wonders if it really cleans them better than just water. Amami nods and says it does because staying clean wards off a bunch of diseases, and good hygiene is the best shield against getting sick. A maze of hospitals and exam rooms clanks with medical tools, and somehow this world just gets it asterisk, so a mom's list of must-haves never really ends. But the real problem? He's got no resources left, everything he brought is nearly gone, and in this world, finding replacements feels like a nightmare with no promise. Alec and Corona lock eyes, both feeling his frustration in the air. Then Alec lets out a heavy sigh and tells him, "I get it, I'll listen to Amami's worries as long as it takes, but right now, let's hit pause and go grab a drink together." Alec brings Amami and Corona to a nearby bar, greets Tiga, the dragon behind the counter, and Tiga welcomes them with open arms. Alec brags, grinning, that he finally pulled Amami into the mix. Then Amami steps up and greets Tiga politely, and the moment Tiga locks eyes with him, pure excitement sparks in his face. He shouts at his workers to crank it up like never before and lay out their very best liquor for the guests. Then a dragon worker snaps to attention, lets out a quick acknowledgement, and rushes off to do it. Amami admits he almost never touches alcohol, and Alec blinks in shock like, "So you can't handle it?" But Amami shuts that down fast, and once Tiga hears it, he leans in. If alcohol doesn't agree with him, he might want to track down this thing called idil, a special drink they serve upstairs, and a mom who's never heard the term just turns to Corona, shaking her head like, "What is that?" Right then, a loud voice blasts from across the bar. It's Normam, an older regular who's been around forever. Tiga gets blasted with a furious shout, "No sketchy fun for fresh faces." Then the guy leans in and orders yet another drink. The dragon worker refills his cup, and Normam shoots him a grateful thanks. And with that, he snaps his focus onto Amami, warns him to keep away from stuff like idil, and insists he stick to plain liquor. Then he offers to buy him one, pushing him to drink it down. Alec snaps at the intrusion, telling the old man to stay out of his business. Then Amami, touched by the gesture, gladly accepts the drink, takes a sip, and realizes it's not chilled at all. Normam asks what he thinks, and Amami says it's pleasantly different, almost like beer. Normam breaks into laughter, then corrects him, "It's called Calwitia, not beer." But Amami's right, the last one was squeezed straight from fruit, and this one is brewed from grain. Amami clocks the resemblance and explains that where he's from, folks called it beer or ale, and they always served it nice and cold. Then Normam freezes because he's never even heard of chilling liquor, and Alec's eyes light up as he tells Tiga to show him how it's done. Tiga flicks a burst of ice magic, chills the cup instantly like the cold hits in a heartbeat, and hands it straight to Alec while a mom and Corona stare in stunned awe at the display, Normam practically jumping to demand, "Let me try it too." After one sip, his eyes popped wide with pure wonder. He chugs the whole drink in one wild gulp and slams the cup down like he just won the moment. Alec shrugs like, "Yeah, it's insanely good," and then his excitement hits just as loud as ever. Norman starts getting poetic, saying liquor used to feel like a sunset over rich, fertile land, but now he knows it can also hit like charging headfirst down a glittering avalanche of gold. He leans in and asks Amami if she's got even more insights to spill. Amami swears it's nothing special, then drops the real twist: mixing liquor with fruit, juice, or other spirits can actually turn out delicious. Norman's already locked in, he vows he'll try it next time and begs for more ideas. But Alex squints at Amami like he's hiding something, because for a guy who doesn't drink, he sure knows way too much about alcohol. Amami finally admits the truth. Back in the day, he loved drinking, especially whiskey, way more than beer. Normam leans in, eyes blazing, and demands to know what whiskey even is. Mom breaks it down: whiskey gets made through distillation. Boil it, steam it, cool it back down, and split the mix by each ingredient's boiling point. Then you end up with a drink that hits way harder. Norman, eyes wide and voice shaking, blurts out that he has to know more. Alex steps in, snaps at Normam to stop badgering Amami, because they didn't come here to talk shop, they came to relax. Normam snaps back with fury, yelling that this is the knowledge they need, claiming their people have been chasing the perfect brew since ancient times, and that better liquor means a brighter future, until the shouting spikes and Alec finally yanks Normam by the hair, forcing the old man to howl in outrage. While Amami's mind wanders, he starts connecting the dots on what he just heard. If distillation is repeated again and again, he realizes it could spit out insanely concentrated ethanol, which might become a powerful disinfectant for his medical work. Right as the fight is about to explode, Tiga cuts in fast, slaps down apologies for both sides, and blasts ice magic into the room, turning parts of it to frost and forcing everyone to cool off for real. Amami shudders as that brutal chill hits him. After everything finally calms down, Normem slips in that since they were already trading ideas. There's one more thing he wants to ask a mommy, and the curious one instantly thinks it's about distillation. But Normem just shakes his head, saying sure, he's curious too, but what he truly wants is for some mommy to check in on his grandson the moment she has a free minute. Amami's caught off guard, because once she really looks past Normem's loud, showy attitude, she realizes he's got real concern underneath. Norman tells Amami his grandson keeps getting constipated and even gets stomachaches sometimes, and Amami immediately calls it what it is, a plain case of constipation. Norman swears it's no big deal and says Amami can check in on him anytime she's free. Then, grateful as can be, he vows to make his grandson a mommy capable of anything she wants for helping him this way. When Amami blurts out in shock, Norman grins like a champion and proudly declares that dwarves can forge anything. No one on Earth matches their skill or smithing. Amami, stunned by the skill, says he'd rather commission something from Normem the normal way, no repayment involved, until Normem snaps back that craftsmanship like this always demands a price, and Amami should take the offer as pure gratitude. Then Alec cuts in, teasing Normem. Pointing at how hammered the old dwarf looks, he demands if Alec can still cough up the money for the tab. Norman snarls, "Of course I can," and snaps, "Alec, mind your manners." Meanwhile, Corona scans the room and asks if dragonfolk always work this bar. Alec shakes his head and says, "Nope," because dragons are sent to harsher spots too, like the Idle Den upstairs. Curious mommy blurts out, "Wait, Idle, I remember you said it earlier." And before anyone can breathe, Normem snaps, shuts it down and warns, "Trust me, you don't want to know, people ruin themselves chasing that stuff." While Alec fires back that some folks use Idle just to get through life, the same way others rely on alcohol, and he shoots a question right back at Normem. "So what makes your drinking any better?" Amami clocks that they're smoking idle and wonders if it's basically tobacco, and Alec says, "If you're so curious, go see for yourself." Norman panics, screaming it's a terrible idea and begging him to stop, but Alec ignores it and marches upstairs. They push into a dim room where the air feels syrupy with a weird sweet scent, and right behind the counter Shia stands there, grins at Alec and calls him by his usual nickname. Normem yanks the conversation to a stop by shouting a hard no, and Shia immediately shoots him a warning to keep quiet. Norman fires off a warning under his breath, loud voices mess with the customers, and there's zero chance of any flames inside. Alec accuses her of already knowing about the fight downstairs, but then he leans in and tells Shia, "We're only here to watch." She nods, motions them inside, and lets the tension spill in with them. Inside, the room buzzes with people, huddled in corners or sprawled on soft cushions like they're waiting for something big. He quietly sucked thin streams of smoke from a strange glass pipe, a faint haze slid through the air, and one man coughed out weakly before collapsing back into a dazed calm. Mom snaps her focus on everything and the pieces click. "This has to be Idle." Alec nods and confirms it. "And don't get it twisted, almost nobody comes here for fun." Mom spots the hollow stare in the smoker's eyes and the deep, worn-in lines of exhaustion etched into their face. Shia spills it to everyone. "Adil, Aka God's sigh can mute pain so hard that even the world tree's healing leaves can't reach it. For a little while it wipes the hurt clean, buys people peace just long enough to drift off to sleep, and that's exactly why they need it." Mommy just stares on, stunned speechless by what she's hearing. He realizes it doesn't just get you drunk, it smothers the pain until it's gone. His mind races as his own world's medical knowledge clicks into place, and the idea that breathing in something could erase pain completely leaves him utterly hooked. He realizes this power could be turned into real medical miracles. If they tested it the right way, it could knock the pain out cold. Something absolutely vital for pulling off surgery, while he thinks, pieces of scientific history start clawing at his mind. In 1772, chemist Joseph Priestley stumbled onto nitrous oxide, this wild gas that made people feel euphoric when they inhaled it. Then young folks started using it as a cheap stand-in for alcohol, until physicians noticed it could numb pain and spare the agony of injuries, and that single breakthrough ignited the whole idea of general anesthesia. The human lands with what? In the Chamber of the Six Stars, the meeting kicks off, and you can practically feel the tension snapping in the air. Comet blurts that maybe ending the crisis just means killing the target, and he even hints their whole mission could be an assassination. Then Arch snaps back hard, saying Krenelson's crimes don't erase the fact that he's still one of them and their job is to take him alive. Archbishop Icres cuts in with an icy tone, repeating Comet's question about whether they're really just here to kill him. Cress warns that all this soft emotion is a trap, then shrugs that whether Krenelson or his deacon lives or dies doesn't matter, only that the church's goals come first. Arch can't even speak after seeing how coldly ruthless he is. Comet grumbles that this job feels worse than the humiliating publicity work they were forced into before. Saul fires back with a plan to play it smart, gather intel, sneak in and look around, but FIA cuts him off, saying Saul is too obvious to go undercover, so they should settle it the honest way by chance. She flicks 3 coins up into the air, catches every single one with ease and starts explaining that each person. You've got to flip heads or tails for the gold, silver and copper coins, and if 2 people match the exact same sequence, they're out. Coins whirl through the air as each member blurts their fate. FIA goes tails, heads, heads, Arch snaps back heads, tails, tails, Soul shouts heads, tails, heads, Comet lands on tails, tails, heads. Zest finishes with tails, tails, tails. Coins rain down and when FIA cracks open her palm. The aftermath spits out 3 brutal tails. She laughs, calls Zest the loser, and that's how he gets picked for the mission. Zest doesn't even blink, stands up and declares. So he clings to the belief that luck crowns him as the perfect pick, and honestly he won't let anyone else do it, he's going himself. Fia snaps that this violates her own rules, but Arch just shuts his mouth tight. Saul and Comet back them up instantly, and the crest seals the meeting by praising Zess for jumping into action, because actions hit harder than speeches, before Zess bows deeply and heads out. Outside the city walls, a carriage waits under the night sky as a guard flips through the manifest, eyes narrowing. Lon, the merchant, that's the passenger. The guard gives a nod, steps aside and lets him climb aboard and when Zess answers the question while hiding as Lon, he grins and says he's headed southwest. The elven lands beneath the World Tree Cave. Meanwhile, back in the elven realm, Amami leans in and tells Alec and Corona about his newest find. Idol could work as an anesthetic. His eyes spark with excitement, but he makes it clear. Before it can touch medicine, he has to prove it's safe. So he lays out the plan, a full clinical trial, and then, like it's right on the edge of his memory, he starts explaining how, in his world, he'd do it. A clinical trial is how they put brand new drugs to the test on real people, making sure they're safe, figuring out the right dosages, catching side effects, and measuring results against existing treatments. Then they crank it up in phases, starting with a small crew of healthy volunteers and expanding into bigger groups of patients. In Japan, these trials are called CHIKEN, and the whole goal is simple: gather enough solid evidence to earn government approval for medical use. Amami figures he'll have to run tests on multiple people, track the effects, nail the right dosage, and watch for any nasty reactions, though he admits volunteers won't come easy. Alec tells him to call Shia since she already knows a lot about Idil, and Amami nods, ready to lend a hand and uncover how it's used, and what side effects might hit hardest. Eagerly, Alec tells Amami he wants to back her big dream of building a hospital, and her jaw drops at his sudden excitement. So Alec keeps going, saying he's already ordered Normem to craft the tools for him. If she needs blades or instruments, Alec swears he'll forge them himself. He remembered how a mom once begged for a tool with a huge blade. Amami admits those tools could help, but her heart sinks at the thought of Alec getting hurt again while trying to use them. Alec just shrugs off the worry and grins. This time he can tap Spirit Silver, a special material that means no blood sacrifice and no deadly magic. And when a mom who's never heard the term asks what Spirit Silver even is, Alec gives a small, amused smile. Alec points out that Amami seems clueless about everything beyond medicine, then tells him not to worry. He can still help in a bunch of other ways. Without a single extra word, Alec yanks Amami by the arm and shouts that he'll show him Spirit Silver firsthand first. With a brutal leap, he rockets into the sky, yanking Amami along while Corona scrambles in panic and screams for her master, right as